Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on social media at Galen Trombley. I hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings.
Please hold for a very important message.
Lightspeed sequence initiated.
How may I help you?
Bonjour.
Security breach.
The truth shall set you free. Awesome. It's a miracle.
Stabilizing. 3, 2, 1. Mission complete.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Welcome, everybody. Episode 255 of the Galen Trombley Show. This is also episode 1 of 2024. I was thinking the other day, this is actually the 7th calendar year of the podcast. It's really 5 years, but I started in December of 18, and now we have just the 24th. So, guest today, longtime local. You grew up here. We'll have you dive all into kind of the whole background, but you've been doing a lot of media for. That's as long as I've known you or known of you. You've been doing that. We've crossed paths a couple times, but we're going to dive into this. But a big sports guy, and people have probably seen you on the news in some facet or on the sideline or doing something like that. And I have a lot of respect for. I've had a couple guys on, Joey LaFranca. I've had there was. I don't want to start naming names. I'm going to forget. We've had a couple people from this realm. We have not had a sportscaster. It's going to be a little different because you're also on air and you're on the sidelines. You're doing a bunch of stuff. So, Ken, for people who do not know you, sorry, it's Ken Drake, everybody, but people that do not know you, give us a little background on you.
I'm definitely from the area. I competed in Section 7 high school sports like a lot of us have done, and I went to college at Plattsburgh State, so I stayed the local connection, and I have a lot of connections to the Cardinals, I guess, as well, and I root for them, of course. Even though I'm supposed to be somewhat neutral now, but I went worked right out of college, worked in the radio for a short time, and moved on to TV and worked my way up from working at 4 a.m. as a production assistant all the way up to being the sports guy who gets to talk about stuff that the fun side of the newscast, I guess.
Is that so? What did you go to Plattsburgh for? Was it communication?
Mass communications was the degree I got, and it wasn't even funny thing is I was going to be a teacher.
Okay. And
it's funny, my mom was a teacher. Some people know that my dad was more into the radio and voice of the Cardinals for a long time. So it was almost like I feel like I didn't purposely go one or the other, but I'm like, I was going to go this way. I'm like, nah, I'm going to go this way. So I kind of changed halfway through.
The funny thing was, same thing. My dad was at real estate but business. My mom was a teacher. I did the same thing. Went to Plattsburgh undecided, and then went the business route versus teaching.
Right.
So it's very similar. So, at what point did you decide that you wanted to do mass communications or do something with media? Was it Plattsburgh?
It was at Plattsburgh. It was already in college.
Okay.
I think I kind of went in thinking, like I said, kind of go in one direction. Wasn't 100%. Sold on it yet. I kind of just did my, what are they, the gen eds or, the basic courses you have to take anyway in my first year or two anyway. And then kind of, by your junior year, you kind of have to start have a little bit of an idea of what you want to do. So
make it worthwhile while you're there.
So that's when I joined the mass comm department and stuff. And of course, doing public speaking, you have to get in a class in front of kids, and you're like, everyone's like nervous. And like, and now here I'm in a room talking to people all the time.
Were you nervous taking public speaking?
A little bit, I think, yeah. There was a public speaking class I even took in high school. So, okay. And, I think everyone, you're 16, 17-year-old kids, you're all like nervous. And even though all these people in the room, all of a sudden you have to like stand up there and talk about something. And the crazy thing is they're like, you have to do it for like a whole minute. And a minute seems like forever now. Yeah. Now I do a 4.5 minute sportscast every night. And I'm like, I don't have enough time. I need more time to get all this in. So, yeah.
I took my first actual public speaking class at Plattsburgh. Mm-hmm. So it took Yoakum Hall. I forgot that it was a bigger gentleman. I think he's not there anymore, but he was great. And I ended up taking the public speaking class. And like anybody else, I think people have more fear of public speaking than dying. I think that's actually like a statistic. And I just remember getting up, and this is my thing. I did in high school. I did in college. Public speaking. I'm nervous. Everybody's nervous. You know what? I'm going first. I always went first because my theory wasn't that I wanted to get it out of the way, which is part of it. The main reason was there was no bar set. So I can go up and it was like
Sure.
the opening act of a comic. Like nobody's gonna remember me because the headliner is gonna like clean it all up. So I just went up and like even if I bomb, nobody's gonna compare me to the person that went up before. And the benefit was I was always done. So I always volunteer to go first. I'm like, just get out of the way, rip the Band-Aid off.
Smart move, yeah.
Yeah. So it worked. I mean, I think as I got older, I coached some sports for a while, and it allowed me to have a better, more comfortable standing in front of people talking. But I get why people get nervous for sure.
The nice thing for me too is, most people don't realize. I mean, I could have dozens of viewers, I could have hundreds, thousands, whatever the case may be that particular night, and yet I'm in a room with my news anchor who's probably sitting on the desk doing some, working on the rest of the show that they need to focus on.
Yep.
The weather person's over there, checking out what the 5 days, so they're doing their own thing, and there's a camera.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm just talking to a camera, and if 2 other people I work with are also paying attention, that's great too. But I know there are people out there listening.
Do you know how many people listen? Do you ever think about that? I mean, you see like the ratings and stuff. Like we've reached this many households or whatever. I mean, you're talking probably tens of thousands of people. So are you does that ever cross your mind when you're talking, or is it just very chill?
Not really. No. From the very beginning, I always said to me, the number could be whatever it is. To me, I just got to get through these next 4 minutes or 4.5 minutes and do my best to get all these highlights in, and whoever's listening or watching rather, and good for them.
So I'm going to kind of jump around because I want to just build off of stuff you're talking about. So give us like a typical, I'm going to kind of go forward. We'll come back because I usually do history, but I want to dive in a couple things. So what's a typical day for you in the obviously you go to sports, you tape the sports. Like, do you edit? Do you come up with your material? Like how? From start to finish, I guess, how does this whole thing work?
Yeah, it's funny because I will say this. I forever ago, because I've been doing this long enough, that I used to have people go, so what, do you just go on? Because I used to only be on at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And some
Easy
people
gig.
Like, some people, right? And people are like, so what did you just go in at like 10:40, 10:30, 10:45, and you just were, and I'm like, no. They don't realize, and it's not their fault, of course. Mm-hmm. They don't realize everything that goes. I mean, I work a full 8, sometimes 10-hour day trying to get everything, depending on the sports schedule. And so my average day is, kind of, I always tell people I work roughly 3 to midnight. That's, there's times I work earlier than that. Mm-hmm. There's times I can get done a little earlier depending on the day. But, I'm already in, usually my planning starts sometimes days in advance. Like I already know what I'm doing for this whole week ahead. And so I go into this particular day going, all right, I'm going to go to this game at this time. I have to do an interview with this person at this time. I'm my own photographer. I'm my own editor. I'm my own producer because I gotta make sure I get everything down to a certain amount of timing and then put it all together.
So when you said you have about 4.5 minutes.
Yep.
So is that standard every newscast about 4.5?
4.5. I think anywhere in there. I think when I first started, it was actually only at 3.
Okay.
And
that's quick.
Yeah, it does. It goes by quick, and even once you get to that 4-minute mark, maybe 4:30. It still goes by fairly quick. There's nights that you're like, oh wow, that's it.
So when you're up. I'm going to be jumping a lot of questions here. So when you get up there and you're talking, you have, say 4.5 minutes, at what point are they starting to ring you in the earpiece? Like you wear an earpiece, right? Someone in your ear?
Yep. So we have a clock in the studio that can count you down sometimes. Usually I try my best, and again I've been doing this long enough now that I usually go into the show, from the moment I produce the whole thing and I walk into that studio, I already know I probably almost don't even need to pay attention to the clock. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty good at knowing I have 4 minutes of content in front of me. And I'm just going to run through each script and each story and each game. And I know that when I finish, I'll pretty much be right around that 4-minute mark.
And do you write your own script that goes on the teleprompter?
Yeah, I write everything myself.
Wow,
which is helpful because...
Is that normal or do...
Yeah, well, for the sports guys especially it is.
Okay.
The news people, do get help from producers. They'll rewrite the stuff that the producers are going to write because sometimes you don't... Like the producer might write, they're going to write the basics of a story.
Yep.
And then the news anchor is going to jump in and just fine tune it to the way that they speak.
Yep.
Everyone talks a little differently. The way I do sports, the other guy I work with, Taylor, he does sports completely different. We do the same, but it's, we write differently or we might do things differently. So like when we write for each other, I'll always say to him, like, go ahead and change something up if you feel, whatever you need, but here's the basics of what you need.
So how much content do you start off with to get down to the 4.5 minutes? Because I've edited video before, and a lot of it's hard to take stuff out. Because I'm sure you get so much stuff. Like, God, I get like 6 minutes because I can really hit this. But how hard is it to go from? And again, you're seasoned at this, but like, what do you start off typically with before you get down to the 4.5 minute mark?
I mean, it depends. Like, even just last night, I was at a game where a girl scored 1,000 points. So obviously that was part of the reason I went, and because I like having a story to the game sometimes, not sometimes just highlights.
That was
but anyway,
Northeastern,
Northeastern
right?
Clinton.
Yeah.
Bailey the Fountain got to 1,000 last night. She was at 998, so we all knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
But so I started editing, and there's times during the games I'm editing in my head. I might jot a couple of notes down on my phone. Hey, make sure you use this one. And so now I'm getting to the point. Sometimes a game might start to get away from you to the point where, okay, this game's it's over. It's just a matter of letting the clock officially run out. So I might start editing and writing some scripts during games sometimes, or maybe at halftime in between periods of a hockey game. And so now I'm going through and I'm like, okay, I want to use this. These are the ones I want to definitely use.
Yep.
I might, if I need to, I can add this one. I have to have a backup plan in case I need to add time. But like you said, I mean, you kind of hit it perfectly. At least with me, is it's hard sometimes. You see all these kids' achievements and you want to get them all in.
Yeah.
And sometimes the game. It's sometimes a hockey game is 6-1, and you're like, all right, and it's like 2 minutes left in the game. All right, the game's done. I can. And all of a sudden, this one kid come in and score his first career goal.
Yeah.
And it's a meaningless goal because it's now 6-2 or
Yep.
7-1, and you're like, I really want to. I'd love to get that in now.
And you know how much it means for a kid to be on TV.
Sure.
Like, I mean, you were a kid at that time. You're
Yeah.
like, if you made the TV, like, I made it, or the paper, like, I made it.
The biggest thing for us, I always say this to so many people, is maybe I'm dating myself a little because newspapers are starting to go a little bit away.
Yeah.
But you would always grab the paper in the morning and you clip it, and your mom's putting it on the refrigerator.
Oh, yeah.
And the same thing, if the VCR if
Yep.
again, I'm dating myself a little. You're recording the news that night because you and your friends are going to be on. Yeah, that's a great deal. Yeah.
It's wild how much. We'll get into like how much things have changed since when you started. But so when you go, have you ever had an issue with trying to fill the time?
Occasionally,
That you're trying to like pull at straws, maybe a slow night or
Yep.
slow game.
Oh yeah, there's definitely nights that it's maybe it's a holiday and there's no sports going on, local,
Yep.
no college, no high school. So of course then I gotta look a little more national sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and even then sometimes those are in the summer it's always very quiet, of course.
Yep.
But although I feel like there's been a lot more local sports stuff going on as things have grown and stuff. But oh yeah, there's nights that you're like. How I usually ask for more than 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Do you need more time tonight for news? Because I may not be able to fill 3 minutes.
And you guys can manipulate that time?
Yeah, I mean, depending what's going on. As long as the show from start to finish is roughly a half hour or an hour, actually, in our case for Fox. But yeah, I mean, if we need to maneuver, actually last week because of all this, some of the weather we got.
Yeah.
A couple things fell through, and I went and did one story, and all of a sudden out of nowhere they said, we're going to need weather's going to need a little extra time tonight because of some of the storm that's coming in overnight. Would you be able to go shorter, basically, shorter in time? And and it worked out because so many of my games got canceled anyway. So I'm like, sure. So yeah, we can work together and change that. And sometimes again, on the flip side, I might go, hey, I have just so much going on tonight. Is there a way I can get more? Maybe we
Or
drop
a big
a
story. Someone wins like a state championship or a big tournament
yeah,
or
those
CD
of
Acts
course.
or something.
Yeah, and of course we want to go big on those. Yeah, so yeah, we can work together.
If
yeah.
So like when you go, I guess how do you pick the games that you want to cover? And you said like national, regional, college, high school. Like, do you have a pecking order, or is it like national is really just a fill-in if we don't have enough local? Because I feel like most of it's local.
So when I first was a weekend guy back in 2008. And then a year and a half later, I took over a kind of the main gig on an interim basis at the start. Ended up being, that ended up continuing forever.
Yep.
And but the reason I bring that up is because when I was the weekend guy, I was the one going to state championship games and stuff because a lot of them take place on a weekend, of course. And I still remember to this day leaving a state championship game. I had to get back. It was one of those things where we didn't have the technology we have now, where it would have allowed me to stay longer. I can edit on the road and stuff. It's one of those things where I have to leave now so I can get back to the studio in time to start putting everything together and get on air in time. And remember, it was 0-0 going to overtime soccer state championship game. And I'm walking. I'm like, I've already put myself in jeopardy of not making it back in time. So I'm like, I gotta go. This stinks. I have a couple saves from a goalie. Okay, good. And as I'm walking up the stairs at the high school to leave, the goal goes in, and I missed it. And the reason I was mostly mad about that is because I was working by myself that day. And our other guy who was working, the main guy at the time, he didn't work that day because he was going to go cover a New England Patriots game the next day.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, these kids, I just missed one of the biggest goals of this kid's career because we want to cover the Patriots. And with technology evolving the way it is, anyone can pick up their phone now and they can tell you, they know exactly what's going on in any given Patriots games, Bruins game, Red Sox, all the national stuff. And from the moment I kind of took over the main thing, the main Monday to Friday thing, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, I said, we got to go local.
Yeah.
The kid, I know these days you can still find that online now even, as time has passed. But it's so much tougher to find how Plattsburgh High School did, Shazy did, any of the schools it may be, than it is to find your national stuff. So that's why I do pretty much now use national more as a filler. Again, a Stanley Cup, a World Series, sure, that's a big enough deal.
Yeah.
But a regular season game, if it's not a milestone night, it's not a big one.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think, and that even translates to just local news in general. Like, I love local news. I love watching it. I hate national news because it's like doom and gloom, and it's all the, bleeds it leads kind of thing. And I feel that the local stuff is very good, and it's kind of, it just keeps you up to date of what's going on local, just within the community. And now, how far out do you have to travel? I mean, obviously you go to when it comes down to state games, you're going downstate and everywhere, which else. But normally, where do you typically try to stay within boundary wise, or how far are you willing to go for a story on a regular kind of sports night?
It depends. I mean, obviously, all the local stations do cover both sides of the lake. So we do go to Vermont, we go to southern parts of that. But as far as more local for Section 7 in New York, obviously all the Section 7 teams are in play. We can go as far as Ticonderoga, Lake Placid, depending on what's going on. Of course, Plattsburgh and Beekmantown, Peru, some of the small, or some of the closer schools. You don't travel too much to Section 10 unless it's kind of a bigger deal. But as far as traveling, it's mostly anywhere in the section, depending what's going on that night, and what's what we can get back for. Because again, you still have to get back by a certain time to get it all in.
And newsroom, where's the newsroom located? Where do you have to go to do the news?
So again, things have changed. So our newsrooms are actually based in Colchester.
Okay.
However, COVID, as much as it was terrible for so many people for so many reasons, changed the way a lot of the ways we do things now. And the reason I bring that up is I ended up they actually at one point were telling everyone we're trying to spread everyone out. We don't want everyone working together, being in the newsroom together at the same time. And so I ended up having a green screen set up in my basement. Wow. And I played with the lighting, I played with the audio. I did some fake shows and watched them back and edited them and tinkered with some stuff. And I can, to this day, there's people that probably don't know where I am.
So that's where you do all of them?
They're not all, but a lot of.
That's awesome.
I would say since 2020, there's a good percentage of them that, and I'm still, it looks, I think it looks pretty good. I've had people actually tell me wait, are you not in the studio? And I'm like, no. So I'm like, but I like that because that means okay, good. And these are people that I work with, or know.
I've never noticed the difference.
Or notice the business, know the business. So, I think in the end, the viewers not necessarily worried about where I am, but it looks good and I'm presenting their children well and stuff like that. But it's so cool. It's cool it gives you the flexibility though too to be able to not have to be at a certain.
Or you can stay longer at games, or don't miss the goal.
Yeah.
And obviously the commute's easier, and then if you need to make a quick edit last minute, it's right there.
Yeah. Oh, there's times I've had to I'll be editing, and all of a sudden I'll run back downstairs. I got to track this one line really quick again and go back, and So yeah.
So you have a teleprompter at the house too? You just run off of?
I don't. I go completely off memory for anything on camera. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes what you see is not the first take. I've probably done it 3 or 4 times. Maybe I'm I didn't like the way I said that, or I get in the middle of a sentence. I'm like, wait, what am I saying? What's my next line?
Oh, so that's not. It's not necessarily live then.
No, it's all pre-taped, cool. Which is good because it also, again, kind of going back to the timing thing. Now I know, I can tell my producer, I'm like, hey, I went 4 minutes and 10 seconds tonight. They're like, all right, that's fine, 10 seconds, whatever. And if they're like, hey, we're a little heavy tonight, I can go back and take a little piece out, or take one of those highlights out that I don't want to take out, but I have to.
Oh, that's cool.
For timing reasons. So yeah, it's almost always pre-produced.
I never would have guessed either of those things.
I am live from time to time. It's not it's not in every single thing, but
but like you said, nowadays it's you can't. People at the end of the day, they want the content. They don't really care.
I don't think they're worried about what. No. Hey, Ken's actually watching TV right now. He's not actually on TV right now. So yeah.
Well, it's good too. You get some sleep.
Yeah. It allows me to have a flexible schedule, which is really nice.
So so do you set your own schedule for the most part? Minus obviously the newscast has to be put out at a certain time, but. Right. I mean, you can flex, when you want to work or when you want to go to which game you want to go to.
Yeah. I mean, and part of the reason, some of the games we picked, I think you kind of even mentioned it earlier, is, as far as how we pick our games is, I've always told people, I said, there's kind of at least two ways I go about it. What is the biggest game? Where's the biggest story of the day? Okay, that might be our lead. That's what we should go with. Next thing is, where are there games around that I can, call it double up.
Like cluster up.
Right, yeah. Say if I'm going to, I don't know, maybe I'm going up to Rouse's Point for an NCCS game or whatever, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, that's the biggest game of the night. But you know what? Shazy is also home, and they're not that far. So now I'm like, okay, how can I try to get to both of those and, of course, still get my lead story out of it and stuff like that. Sometimes the biggest thing, unfortunately, there are occasions where the biggest story of the night is all the way in Ticonderoga, and there's nothing around there. And I'm not picking on them. It's just they're one of the furthest schools in our section. And I'm like, if I go all the way down there, I'm only getting that one game or that one story, which doesn't mean it's not important. But now I have nothing else for the rest of the show, and I got to figure out how to fill in maybe 2.5, 3 minutes of it. Whereas if I go to Peru, I could also I'll Sable's home, so I could jump up in the Northway and go up and down there and get those two games.
Are you ever able to outsource some video from people?
Yeah,
at least if someone captures it and you kind of get the gist of the game. And
I'm definitely big on trying to have our own stuff. I don't want to miss moments, but of course, on any given day, there's been times people are like, "Hey, they'll send me actually." Plays of the Week is actually a big one. I started Plays of the Week a while back, and people will send in nominations, I guess, if you will, say, "Hey, this is my son, my granddaughter, whatever it may be," and half court shot or something. I'm like, "Yeah, that's a great play." I'm like, and of course, it's not ours, but I'm like, "Yeah, if you're letting us use it, absolutely, I'm going to use it."
I also find those start blowing up too, especially when you start posting on social media and stuff, and then it's like people are voting and sharing, and of course, again, you got a kid that makes like a good, just a good play. For that kid, it becomes like an instant celebrity for a week or two in school.
Absolutely.
Especially if you win it.
Every time I lay out the Plays of the Week, the nominees, I can almost always tell you who's going to win the moment I hit send on that and post the link and everything, because it's just high school will always trump college, which I think makes sense, actually. It doesn't mean the college play might be one of the best plays in the area. And maybe
some of them even made Sports Center.
Sure.
Yeah.
But high school is going to win because it's more local. While a lot of the college guys and girls, while they're great athletes, most of them aren't local. So the local connection, the high school is, of course, always going to win.
It's also, too, when you got 4 teams competing and they're all 4 local schools.
Right.
I'm like, I want to beat Saranac or Beekmantown, and Plattsburgh's like, well, it's Plattsburgh. Like, we don't care. Yeah. Everybody roots for Plattsburgh.
Exactly.
It's college.
Yeah.
So when you're, I guess, trying to pick game, you kind of went like where you'll go on a given date or whatever. But like in regards to trying to stay on top of the sports seasons, on top of the stories, like the girl in Northeastern, like knowing she's going to hit 1,000 points, or knowing there's some like, it could be a coaching record, it could just be maybe someone's streaks on the line or something. Like, how do you, I guess, where do you get all your research from? Are you really diving into like the papers, diving into like interviews with people, like? I guess, like, from especially a local standpoint where it's not just plastered all over online, like, where do you go for resources to try to keep up with everybody?
It's a combination of, sometimes it's as simple as just word of mouth. People messaging, emailing me, message me on social media or something, say, "Hey, my son or daughter is going to do this on Wednesday. Can you come out?" And and that's, I'm like, that's always going to put. Now I'm going to put that in my calendar and be like, "Yep, I'm going to put that near the top of the list." It's nothing's ever a guarantee, I say, just because you never know if something's going to happen, but breaking news of some kind. But okay, now that's now my top priority on Wednesday, for example, or something. And it's always, there's been times people are like, "Oh, you missed it last night. So and so scored their 1,000th point," and I'm like, I wish I knew. So I'm always telling people, spread it out. Please reach out to me. I'd rather have 20 people tell me about the same thing than no one. So, as far as that, those are the biggest things is, reaching out, letting us know about it, and we can try to make it out there.
Do you follow, like, statistics of standings and stuff of just kind of knowing, like, the top 2 matchups maybe?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think there's more stuff online. You can find out more. Sometimes when I'm really interested in something, like you mentioned, even like someone's, going for a perfect season or something. Okay, I'm keeping, especially maybe in high school football, it's pretty easy to keep track of. A couple of years, 2 seasons ago, Peru had a perfect regular season. Went and did a story with them at the end of the year and stuff. But yeah, I mean, now you're following them more and more because you're like, all right, they still haven't lost. They're still, and even the NCCS girls basketball last night, I didn't know until last night, they're undefeated. They're 11-0. I mean, they're a very good team, so it's not surprising. But now it's one of those teams you're going to watch come sectionals and maybe into the tournament.
So what year, you said 2008 was when you started doing sports?
So actually 2000, I think I misspoke a little bit actually when I realized when I said, so 2000, so actually I can go even further back. 2000, Mark Sudol, all the way back
Yeah,
when, I'm going to
yeah.
drop a name there.
Yeah.
He actually reached out to me. I was working at the station already. And he said, I'd been shooting some sports for them, just
Okay.
going out and grabbing some highlights from some local games and stuff. And he reached out to me one time. He goes, I'm wondering, we have a couple dates coming up that, I'll drop in their name, Chris Kelly. Chris and Mark, they couldn't, like, we can't do these days. We're looking for some help. Would you be interested in filling in? without
Like this
missing
is live on
Yeah.
or on screen.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. I mean, I didn't even miss a beat. And like, he goes, all right, we're gonna have you do some practice shows. So I would read, I'd do their shows. I'd rewrite them a little bit and stuff. And
Yeah.
And the news director at the time said, yeah, okay, we'll give you a shot. So I think I'm gonna do 2 or 3 shows a year. And I end up doing like 20 or 30. And then then eventually I got, I got to be the weekend guy.
You're kind of like
the main guy and work my way up.
You're like Tom Brady and Drew Bledsoe. Like just give Tom that chance, right?
Yeah, give me that one chance. That's all I need.
So what year was that? You said that was
So actually, that goes all the way back to, I started filling in, I guess, if you will, in 2005.
okay.
And I'm trying to remember, I guess it was 2008 that I officially became the weekend guy. And then the main guy only a year and a half later. Again, it was like interim basis. And and at one point, I was like, it was getting stressful. I'm like, because of course I wanted the job. They were interviewing different people for the job.
Yeah.
So lots of sports you can get, as soon as a sports opening happens around here, you'll get 20 or 30 tapes within like an hour. It's very competitive. And so I wasn't sure what was going on. And at one point, I think some of the best advice I got was, it may not be your show technically or your job technically, but it's yours right now.
Yeah.
So make it your own. And I think that made me more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I just started going about it and doing what, and maybe that played through. But
just settled in a little bit.
yeah, I think because at times I felt like I was maybe just very stressful because I'm trying to think, I'm overthinking it. I'm trying my hardest to get this job. I have to be very careful about everything I do. And also I'm like, you know what? No, just relax.
Yeah, once you loosen up.
Yeah.
I think this happened for me even like on a professional setting. When I acted more like myself, one, it's easier because you're not you're like way less stressed and just doing your thing. But I find that people like authenticity. So when they look at it and you're like, you know what? It's not for everybody, but like, the people that like you, and they like you for the right reasons. And then you're like, great. Like, then it feels, it's just more chill that way. So I think that's cool. So, excuse me. So, from 2005, obviously going back prior, but what has been your biggest sports highlight that has stuck? Do you have one that sticks out over any of them? It might not even be like a special event. It could have just been like, might have been your first one. I don't know. Like, anything that really jumps out that this was...
There's probably I guess
your Mount Rushmore, or even give me a Mount Rushmore of like Ken Drake stories that you covered.
There's a lot of good ones. I've been very fortunate to cover a lot of big moments. I've covered, I've done youth sports all the way up to, I've gotten the chance to do professional stuff. One thing I'll always know is cool is, so when the Giants beat the Patriots, and I believe it was the second time. And
are you a Giants guy?
I am.
Yeah, me too. So
yeah,
we'll allow you to keep the story.
Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry to the Patriots fan, but so we the Super Bowl was on our network that year, and so of course we went big. It was two local teams of interest. A lot of Patriots, Giants fans in the area, and Giants won the Super Bowl. And I went online and looked to see when the parade was. And I'm like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to go and check that out. Something, the little bucket list thing. And I found a thing that said media request to cover the parade. And I'm like, well, I'm going to put a credential in. No way I'm going to. Some guy from Plattsburgh, New York. No one down there knows who I am, where we are and all that. And I get accepted. So I messaged my news director at the time, who's also a Giants fan, so this may have helped. But
I was gonna say.
I said, so I know we were going big on the Giants Patriots Super Bowl. I just got accepted to go cover the parade. And he goes. I said I have to be there at like 6 a.m. This is like 9 o'clock at night, the night before.
Oh, jeez.
And he goes, can you tape your show and get going? I hit the road. I'm like, yep. I'm thinking there's no way he was going to send me. He said I can go. So I drive through the night. I did stop off like somewhere halfway through, and I get there and I arrived where I'm supposed to be, and I said hi. They give me my credential, and they said, all right, Ken Drake, you're on float 4. I'm like, what? I'm thinking I'm just going to stand on these bleachers over here and shoot the parade as they go by. No, I'm in the parade.
No
They
way.
they had a media part. There was about 6 or 7 of us, and then so I'm using my video camera and I'm videoing the people and I'm videoing the whole event as the parade's starting.
Confetti falling over.
Mike Tyson was in a hotel waving down at us from a hotel window, which I thought was funny. But I'm like, and so I take my phone out and I'm getting pictures and videos for social media. And at one point, I just put both my cameras down. And confetti's falling on me, and I'm going down the Canyon of Heroes, which so many New York professional athletes will never get a chance to do.
That's so.
And I'm just like, this is amazing. This is what
so cool.
that's one of my coolest moments. I mean, there's been a
absolutely.
lot of great ones, but personally, and that's just one that's kind of a lot of people don't get to do that.
Well, also the whole idea of that is less than 12 hours earlier you found out.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's so spontaneous, and that's like when you sit there and when you try to come up with an itinerary or something, oftentimes it doesn't live up to the hype. But if you do something spur of the moment, it's always going to exceed expectations.
Oh, yeah.
And that's bizarre, how cool that is. Did you get to ride with? It was just media on the. Who were you near on the floats?
We were near the tight ends and some backup players, not some of the bigger name guys of course Eli Manning and some of those guys. They of course were way up front and with the
That's
Tom
so
Coughlin
cool.
with the trophy and stuff like that. But yeah, I was.
That's surreal, though.
I mean, no one's necessarily a no-namer when you win a Super Bowl, but there's a lot of guys that you wouldn't necessarily have remembered were on the team and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just seeing. I mean, how many people were there? 1 million people probably just lining the streets.
Yeah. People, at one point, when people started chanting, each float goes by, and at one point, this one group of people starts chanting, "Who are you?" They're looking at us like, "You guys aren't players." Who are you?
I feel like I'm the third string kicker.
Right? Yeah.
No, that's great. I was just looking. I couldn't remember the scores. I know they were close, but there were
yeah.
only 3 points, I think, on each of them.
Yeah.
Obviously, so being a Giants fan, I think this is my senior year of high school and senior year of college, and they won both of them. So it was right when I was huge in the sport. So I have good memories of both of those. But
Both times they took a lead late, and I was with friends of mine. They're Giants fans. Like, yeah, we're gonna win. I go, whoa. Tom Brady has 1 minute and 4 seconds left. I'm not guaranteeing anything yet. I'm a little worried, but yeah, luckily they pulled it out.
Look at, 7-3 at halftime. See, I don't remember all those little details,
Right.
but 17-14, but again, that wasn't a high-scoring game. I just looked at the other one. The one you went to would have been...
It was the 2011
21-17.
season, but yeah.
Also, the crazy thing about this is just look at the records of the Giants. 9-7, and I think the other one was 10-6, if that. I think they limped in as a wild card in both.
I think the 9-7 season that year was they had to win their final 2 games just to get in the playoffs, and I think at the time they were the worst record, I guess, if you will, to ever win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think they were the only team ever to win all the games on the road.
Yes.
At both years, right?
I know definitely the second one. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the first one.
The first one there, I think they were even worse of a team,
Okay.
record-wise. But that was the year they were undefeated, and if people remember, I think it was week 16 the Giants almost beat the Patriots in the regular season.
That was the undefeated season.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they, I just remember watching that game, and Randy Moss had some crazy catch late in the game to win it. But the Giants. So going into the Super Bowl, I was like, we might have a shot.
Yeah.
They played them tough. It was week 15 or 16. It was late in the season, but I also was actually rooting for the Patriots to go undefeated that year because I'm like, Giants are out. They're a wild card team, but there's no chance of winning. And then all of a sudden they keep going. They finally got there. I'm like, sorry, I do want to see the undefeated season broken. But now regarding, I guess some other question. I just want to see the best of Ken, career that we can fix. Is there a play that you remember vividly? Like this was the best play you saw live, or best one you saw on camera?
I don't know why this one always pops in my head. I mean, I do in the sense it's a really great play. But I mean, again, so we have our plays of the week. There's times I'll admit I have to throw in. We have right now. I do 4 nominees each week. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, the 4th one is not necessarily stellar.
Yeah,
but it helps me round out my top 4. But usually, we always have at least 2 or 3, at least good ones. Sometimes all 4. And then by the time we get to plays of the year at the end of the year, now I get to pick the bet, which the ones are really over the best. And this is going a while back. It was a New York State. It was high school football, New York State regional game, I think. It was at All Stable Valley. Beekmantown Eagles are playing.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember the name or know the name. Justin Stevens. He played for Beekmantown.
I don't know.
Okay, he was a pretty good athlete for them. And, of course, it was on the far sideline. But I'm goes back. The throw goes to him. So on the left sideline, he goes back to make the catch. And as he reaches back, he has to kind of like turn around, the throw slight behind him. He reaches, and of course, I know it's not easy to, I'm trying to describe it because I know now people can't see what I'm showing you, but he reaches back with one hand, his right hand, and as he tries to pull it in while running still, as fast as he can, he pulls it in and he kind of traps it on the back of his helmet. It practically rolls across his shoulder blade as he pulls it in with the left hand, pulls it in, and keeps going all the way in for like a 75-yard touchdown. It wasn't even like a 2-yard touchdown. It was like, and I just remember I'm like still videoing, but my mouth has dropped open.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I have so many fans yelling, "Did you get that? Did you get that?" And I'm like, yeah. And I had to watch that back immediately. That was, again, there's been a lot of good ones. I'm sure there's plenty of it. If someone reminded me like, oh, actually, yeah, that was a really good one too. But that one always pops in my head for some reason.
How many games in a typical week do you think you get to go to?
It depends.
Like just 5 or 6, or do you, like you said, multiple a night?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 10 to 12 might be right. Obviously, the weekends you can get a little more. Sometimes during the week you might only get 2 a night or something, depending on. Again, it goes all the way back to geography of where everyone's playing that night and all that. But like tonight, I know there's 2 I can get to there fairly close. But yeah, and then Saturdays there's a chance. Sometimes there's games going on anywhere from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So I can get games all day. But yeah, 10 to 12 is probably an average. I've never actually figured it out, but.
And when you go over to Vermont, how do you try to go like? Do you cover the entirety of Vermont, or do you?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the coverage area, the viewing area, I guess, if you will.
Down like White River Junction. And
that's where you start to hit the cusp of it. But yeah, White River definitely counts. Start to go a little. There's a couple like Brattleboro is like one of the high schools in Vermont that's like almost one of the southern. You're almost leaving Vermont.
Okay.
And that's one of those ones we probably usually won't. If it's a big enough game, maybe we will go. But it's at the same time. It's it's starting to leave the viewing area. Is it really worth sending someone 3 hours down for one game? So that kind of goes back to what I was saying before, as far as geography and making sure you have enough.
Well, regarding sports guys, are you the only sports guy? Like you got some guys that fill in and help you out with some recordings, or
no? There's 2 of us. It's usually I've always worked with a 2-person department.
Okay.
Always wanted 3. Should have been 3. It just makes everyone's job easier and stuff. But I mean, 2 people can do it if it's planned out correctly. But even then, there's always been a 2-person department, we've always been fortunate enough to have a photographer, or we used to have production assistants that would be willing to help out and go shoot a game and get a game, and that allows us to have get even more of our stuff covered. And I remember one time WCAX they said, "How does Ken do that?" We have at the time I was by myself. It was one of those times where a weekend guy had left and I had was waiting for the next guy to come in, and he goes, "We have 3 people and he's getting just as many games as we are." And I'm thinking, I'll take that as a compliment for sure.
Are you very good logistically of just like planning out and routing out your week?
I try to, and like everything can change. And today's with the weather outside right now, things are my day's already changing. I had a plan A, and it looks like I'm already going to go to a plan B. They both work. It's just with the logistics of the weather and travel and stuff, it's smarter to stay a little closer to home where I can still get some good games.
And when you go to a game, how like basketball game last night, like did you go just until the girl hit the 1,000 point and then bail, or could you try to stay the whole game?
No, I stayed. Yeah, so especially in a big moment like that, getting 1,000 points. Of course, she came in with 998. Yeah. So not only do we know it was going to happen, I expected it. I'm like, it's going to happen. It's going to be like 2-0 because of her in like the first minute of the game.
Yeah.
It took almost
right, or pretty close.
Yeah, it took like 2 minutes. Yeah. And she actually got fouled in the shot, so she ended up, which did not fall. So she ended up going to the line to get both, 2 free throws, and the second one hits it and stuff like that.
I actually saw a cool photo. I forgot who took it, but it was a photo, and she was shooting, and you were one of the people underneath the basket. But there was like 3 or 4 different, like there was a couple of photographers, probably like a mom, and some, there was a couple newscasts and stuff. But again, at a high school basketball level, you don't see that often, that you have kind of like a little line of media taking a picture of you. Because it's kind of perfect because it was a foul shot, so it's kind of quiet and you can get in position.
Well, it's funny because I like to shoot a lot of my games at half court, and that's where I've shot. Most of my highlights from last night are all from half court.
Okay.
On the bench side. And when I saw, she was going to go for the free throw, I'm like, I don't do this often, but I'm going to move. I like to try to stay central. And I moved in it. And as I get there, it's funny, you said you saw all these people in this picture. She saw us too. I
Oh,
saw
yeah.
her make eye contact, and I'm like, now I feel bad. I'm like, oh, if she misses this, I don't want her to feel nervous and miss it. So I'm glad she got them both.
Such a stud, yeah.
Yeah,
Gets up in the-
but at the same time, like I actually really love the candid shots and videos in the sense that like people sometimes they'll see me and they'll wave or something, which is fine. But I want to be like, when I'm videoing. But at the same time, I'm trying to get the shots of the kids just being kids and teammates and playing the game and not worrying about when I'm, those are a little more fun. So when she saw us, I was like, oh no, I hope she's not nervous and stuff. I don't want her to overthink it. And, so I kind of want to blend in with the background. I don't want anyone to really notice I'm there.
Be like the fly on the wall of the
yeah.
game.
And that way, I think sometimes I even get some better shots that way.
Is there like tricks of the trade that you guys have that you try to, like things that you take, like you might take for granted, but we have no clue? I mean, kind of like when you talked about doing the teleprompter and kind of doing it like down in your basement and green screen, like that was, I didn't know that. But anything during the game, like best positions or best, like some kind of style you're trying to go for, or like what, any like weird things that people wouldn't guess about a newscast?
But a newscast or?
I mean, just like anything you do, like filming, whether it's editing or telling a story or just on like actually, presenting in front of a camera. Is there stuff that you do that we just would never pick up, but we probably would know about it if you said it?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I mean, I have like preferences when I go to games of places I like to try to be from. I actually, for a long time, I used to like to shoot right on the field level. And now if I get a chance to be a little more elevated and have a little press box to go up, I think I feel like I can see more. That way I don't have, every once in a while, if I'm field level, I'll see someone's about to score a goal and doesn't a defenseman who's not even part of the play walk right in front of my shot or something, or referee happens in basketball.
Ball kid or something.
Yeah, basketball a lot better. Yeah, someone's in my way. So that's why I try to be a little more elevated. And so I do always try to do that at least and stuff. But no, there's nothing too much that I do, little things I do. There's lots of little sayings I have, which I'll admit I totally not steal from movies, but they're totally lines from movies.
I was always thinking Anchorman when, just the sportscaster and Anchorman. When you're talking originally about just kind of some of the stuff you're doing, it was like the first few minutes of the podcast. I was just thinking of, I don't know the character, but he plays Packer in The Office. You know what I'm talking about?
His name's Champ or something. I think
Champ in the movie, in the
Yeah,
show, but I can't remember the actor. But he's just. I forgot his like slow or his
he says whammy.
Whammy, there you go.
I've never done whammy. People have asked me. I'm like, no. I said, well, I think that movie's funny and stuff. I'm like, no, I'm not doing whammy. I just feel like it'd be a little too, almost too cheesy. There's probably some stuff I already say that's a little cheesy, but yeah, there's certain ones I will do a lot, and they're all lines of movies, but they're like obscure that if you're not really paying attention, you wouldn't even notice I'm doing it, or that I do it fairly often.
So what's some of your go-tos? If you don't mind sharing.
Dumb and Dumber, the original Dumb and Dumber, Jim Carrey and
Jeff Daniels.
Jeff Daniels, yes. Like if say a kid maybe playing defense, and doesn't play the ball well, and it goes and it's a goal. It goes, and then doesn't he come down and score the next time? And I'm like, and he totally redeems himself, that's just a line from a movie. But again, I'm like taking a little bit out of context, but it perfectly makes sense for what I'm going for. And that's the only one that comes to mind. I know there's 4 or 5. Again, I feel like I've gotten so used to saying them that I don't even realize I'm doing it. But there's movie quotes and things that I'll purposely do.
I think my most quoted one, like from Dumb and Dumber, is when he goes up and he's like, "Big gulp, eh?" And he goes, "Well, see you later." Like, so it was just like an awkward moment. I usually use it with my wife if she says something like, "Big gulp, eh?" Like just some random thing, but that's such a classic movie. So I also think too, like I grew up in the. I don't watch SportsCenter much anymore, but I feel like I grew up in the golden age of SportsCenter.
Yeah.
And I think of like Stuart Scott, and you think of these guys that just have these catchphrases like Scott Van Pelt. Is there anybody that you look up to, whether it's in the sportscast arena that you're like, that is, whether an announcer or just someone in front of the camera that you've always looked up to, or it's kind of like your top, or maybe you pick something up from?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one particular person that I was always a big Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann fan because they would always do their sports shows together. Yeah. Not saying I took like In Fuego. They used to say that one a lot and stuff like that. I'm not saying I took those, but I think just watching those guys and stuff like that, I think I was just, again, I was learning without learning because I was like, I'm realizing I'm watching what they're doing because you want to be entertaining too. Sometimes you don't want to be just straightforward. This guy went down and scored a goal, and then this time, you want to have a little fun with it. You want to throw in a joke here and there. There occasionally, I think some people will try to go overboard, and they become what actually my dad will say, and it's true. He's a little too ESPN-y is what he'll say, and because he's trying to be overly, and a lot of viewers will tell me. Viewers are very smart. They know they can pick up on what someone and I've been fortunate enough that most people tell me I do a fairly good job. And not saying I'm perfect every time, but I try to throw in I try to be a little humorous and have some fun because I'm very laid back and I like to have fun all the time. And sometimes I'll throw it in a show, and as I'm saying it live on air, all of a sudden I wrote it and it was funny, and I'm saying it on air, and I'm like, while I'm still talking in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, that didn't land well. I didn't like that. And I'll watch it back, I'm like, yeah, it didn't come across online or on air as well as I thought it would. So it's all sometimes.
Have you ever scrapped a joke midway through? You're like, I'm gonna do it. And I'm like, I'm not gonna do it.
I think occasionally here and there. I will say to sometimes to people like, hey guys, I have a question, and I'll read it out loud to the newsroom and be like, I'll read the line for that highlight, and I'll know probably what I'm going to hear. And they're like, if my producer's like, if you have to ask us if you should say that on air, you already know you probably should not say that on air.
I was gonna say it's kind of like a bad dad joke or something. That's just it's just gonna be like a real.
Which I would probably work in and probably have done occasionally, but yeah.
Do you remember the show? I think it was on ESPN when they did like a reality show to try to find a sports host.
Yes.
And I don't remember what it was called, but I just remember it was kind of like, I'm assuming these were people from like smaller news stations that were trying out. Yeah. But it was, I just remember watching it. It was pretty cool because you saw like the behind the scenes of what they were doing. This is so long ago. Again, I don't know the name of it, but I just didn't. Like when you go and like interview for stuff, and you said if a newscast position opens up, like people flock to it.
Yeah.
Is that more? Does it happen because of the region? Does it just happen because it's a very valuable gig? Like,
I think it's actually a hard gig to get into, and partly because more and more stations nationwide have started to, especially in bigger markets like bigger cities and such, but have started to almost get rid of or scrap their sports departments, and it's kind of a smaller market thing now, I think. And there was times I used to have to fight to try to get more to be local because not everyone wanted that. And so I think a lot of people are having trouble finding it because more and more stations are getting rid of it. And what they'll do is if a big sports story happens, it's going to be national. It's almost never going to be. A lot of those places they don't even cover their state championships and stuff like that. So but if their team wins because they're in a bigger city, they probably have a professional team. If that team wins a championship, they'll just have one of their news anchors read it and say, hey, so-and-so won the Super Bowl, and congrats to them. And it's a small little something, whatever. But that's why I think why so many people as soon as a job opening comes up, everyone's trying to get in because the openings don't always come around that much often because some of those openings, those doors are closing. Once a spot opens, they're not going to fill it. So
you've been pretty lucky. You haven't had the travel then. You've been able to stay in the region.
Yeah, I got pretty lucky. As far as. I started as production assistant going in at 4 a.m. when I first started in TV and, kind of paid my dues per se. I am not a morning person, so I was never a morning person. So all of a sudden I'm, getting up at 4 for 4 in the morning and working till 1 in the afternoon. And that was a weird shift for me and stuff. But I got my foot in the door and, I asked questions. I tried to learn stuff and, and things like that. And eventually, like I said before, I got a chance to be asked to be the fill-in guy, and that only propelled from there.
Have you ever thought about doing a podcast?
I have.
Yeah.
It's really funny you say this, and it's funny that we're, because I know you guys reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and it's so funny because in the meantime, I've always wanted to do one. I actually talked about it, especially since COVID happened, because again, things were things were happening, people were home and stuff like that, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to do something like that, and I've had a lot of people just in the last couple weeks just coincidentally ask me. And I had someone ask me, and I haven't even asked him this, so if he ever ends up listening, maybe this is how he'll find out. Someone said that they think my dad and I should do one.
Yeah. I'm going to ask about your dad in a little bit.
And I'm like, I don't know that he'd want to. But I'm like, it wouldn't be the worst thing. It'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I actually think, and I just said this last night to someone, that a lot of Cardinal hockey fans would probably love that.
Absolutely.
Not saying that would be the theme, but
his voice still comes to me when I think of Cardinal hockey.
Right.
Like just growing up. Yeah, just the reason I say it, I've had a couple people that I think anybody can do a podcast. I don't really have a theme to my podcast, but there's people that like Matt Boyer, who does the ghost tours. I'm like, you got to do a history podcast. I mean, like, kind of almost like a Dan Carlin, but you could go long, go short, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But local history, then I think of someone like you that likes sports, media background. It's kind of like you. What were you saying, Colin Cowherd, before you got here?
Yeah,
Is that
listening to him a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he goes 3 hours by. I mean, I know he's got people that look up stats and
Sure.
stuff, but that
Yeah.
guy fills 3 hours and
Yeah.
just rants on about. And he's very good. He's, I think, very knowledgeable. I mean, I know he's it's like anybody else. You either agree or disagree with stuff, but I think a lot of it is he's got to fill time, and I think he does a great job. And I think I don't know. I just think that was something that you could. I always find that if people have an interest and it's a popular thing, like people love sports, but it's almost like a local. There's no local sports podcast that I know of.
I don't think so. And that's part of it. And that's what I would be more interested in going towards too. Yeah.
And it would be like a local one, so you could talk about. I mean, you could do whatever you wanted, but
Sure.
I'm like, to me, if you start doing regional or just cover, Plattsburgh sports, or start covering local sports, I mean, you could really just build a whole thing off of seasons and different players, and I think it's cool. And you can do it on your own time, so it's like,
Right.
Yeah, just something I was like,
I'll pick your brain more after we're done here.
yeah, I'll give you all the tools. Actually, someone reached out to me. I think I'm talking to them in a couple days. They're doing a podcast. I've had people ask me about it. It's really not hard to set up, and I think, it's easier to ask somebody. I did some like Google research. This was 7 years ago. I'm just kidding, 5 years ago. But back in 2018, I learned some stuff, and a lot of it's just trial and error.
Right.
But I'll be honest, what I do is about as basic as it gets, so like anybody can replicate it. People are like, oh, does it take long to put it up? I'm like, I can put this. It takes me longer actually to do the social media posts around it than it does to upload. It takes me maybe 3 to 5 minutes to upload the whole thing.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't edit it, because I'm just like, unless someone said something absolutely crazy, 255 episodes has never happened. So it's very easy. I mean,
I'll try not to break your streak then.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I was gonna say you got to go pretty off the cuff. You need a big cancel moment, but we might keep it in. You'll get the ratings up.
Yeah, sure.
So speaking of your dad, again, how would people know your dad? I'm gonna let you tell the story because it's be more heartfelt coming from you than me. But your dad, North Country. I'm going to say icon. At least his voice is iconic. I'm sure he's a great guy. I don't know him personally, but people have heard his voice at some point in time.
Yeah, I mean, he started. It's funny because he actually ended up in Plattsburgh by accident, and he was supposed to.
What's his real name?
Alan.
Okay.
No one. I don't know if
It's
anyone
Ducky,
knows
right?
that. Yeah, but everyone calls him Ducky. Yeah.
Am I saying? That's. Yeah. There you go.
Yep. There it is.
He retired in 2014.
It's been 10 years. This is the 10th
Wow.
year since he's been gone because this is the 50th season of Cardinal hockey. Yep, and he did the first 40.
It's wild too. I never knew his name.
Yep.
Alan. I never knew his real name.
Actually, the funny thing is, anyone that listens to this, you would probably just like
That's a fun.
blew everyone's mind.
That's a
Everyone's
fun
like, wait,
fact.
that's his real name?
Yeah. I'm like, there's no way his name's Ducky. But
Right? Yeah.
How did he get the name Ducky?
So Drake is a mallard or a male duck. It's
Okay.
pretty much that simple. And
Wow.
I guess way back when, someone had,
As younger
knew that and found out about it when he was a lot younger, starting out in the area, and he started doing Cardinal hockey. Their first year was, so I'm trying to remember, is it the 73-74 season? I think is what it was, 1973-74 season. They weren't actually officially. I believe, and I'm almost 100% sure this is all right, but. They weren't. I don't think they were officially. I don't know. Not varsity's not the word, but like a sanctioned team right away. I think they're more club. I think they were more club for a year or two, and then then they became what they are now. And he was the first to do it, and he just kept doing it. And I remember the day that he told me he was going to retire. He actually was retiring from basically the business in a sense. And,
Okay.
And I remember we were at lunch, and I said, you've only done 39 years of hockey. So, of course, he did, I'm not saying I'm the reason. I think he knew in the back of his mind. He did kind of know and stuff. So, he did do that 40th season, which is, and then Bob Emery did a really nice thing at the end. He told me ahead of time, and all the guys came out with warm-up jerseys for his last home game, for the last regular season home game against Oswego, of course, which is always a big game anyway.
Yeah.
And they all came out with 40s on their back.
That's so cool.
And so here he is. He's doing, and he's still working his way through the pregame show. And he said he looked down, and he's like, I'm not going to know who these guys are. They're all wearing the same number. What's going on? And he didn't quite pick up on what was going on yet. And then I know, again,
Did they have Drake on the back too?
They did. Yeah.
So
I grabbed. So they auctioned him off. I bought one, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and he's got one that hangs in his living room. It's all gave him one that's all framed.
Yeah.
That night they actually had him come down and center ice
so cool.
and recognize him and stuff. But he didn't know for a long time that people would bring their Walkmans or radios or whatever.
yeah.
You know,
And listen during the game.
Listened while they're at the game.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
remember the first time he said it to me, he goes, "Well, they're at the game. Why are they listening to me?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, but they said that everyone says, like, "Oh no, he just paints it's such a great picture that it just makes more sense."
I remember going as a kid, and I would see people like that, and I was the same thing. I'm like, what are they listening to? And someone's like, oh, they're listening to Wiry. And I was like, and again, I was like, why? And as I got older, then a lot of it, you had mentioned before with Yankee baseball. I'm not a Yankee baseball fan. Like, I'm a Montreal Expos fan. So I've basically stopped following baseball in '04. But I loved listening to John Sterling talk. And I think it was the same thing. Like, I'd be driving to like work and stuff. This was years ago, before Bluetooth and everything else in the car, and I would just turn it on and listen to Yankee games just because his voice was just soothing, and I don't know, it was just weird, but it was like a very calming voice. And same thing, calling the game. And now as I've gotten older, I'm like, you know what? I would have loved to have done that as a kid. But I mean, as a kid, you don't want to do it. But now I'd be like, I'd have no problem listening to it.
Yeah, not many people actually I don't think really grow up, as a kid and go, when you're 6, 7 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a play-by-play announcer. Yeah, I mean, it's probably not the first
But
thing.
now you think as an adult, you're like, that's actually a pretty cool game.
I think by the time people start becoming even late high school, early college, they are already thinking like, oh, actually, that would be a great gig.
Yeah, especially if you're a sports guy. So I'm just kind of looking up. So called games in a way. So 1973, 1974.
Okay, yep.
So he went to every away game. Or almost every away game.
He would travel with the team. He'd be on the bus with the team. He always had a seat up front, so I'm sure he got to hear and see some fun things that the guys would be doing on the bus. But and actually when Bob...
And he went to 2 national championships.
Yep. One was in Minnesota, I think, or at least a bit.
I think the 01 team won at RIT because they beat RIT in the
at
finals.
RIT, yeah, okay.
I don't know the 91, 92 year. I don't know that one.
Yeah, because there's no official home championship. I say no official because they had one they won at home back in '87, but they were stripped of that one. So yeah, but obviously it was at the field house. But most people don't know that happened because it's not even in the record books.
Why was it stripped?
The 86-87 team actually played Oswego in the national championship game
I kind of vaguely know this,
at the field house. Yep, and they, I don't know if I ever heard the official rules and rules of why this happened. So there's another thing. Like, don't maybe fact check me on this. But
it was an NCAA.
I actually heard it had something to do. Yes, and I heard it had something to do with some violations, possibly with receiving gifts and stuff.
Oh,
this is only
like
what
a
I was
Reggie Bush
told.
thing?
Yeah, this is only what I was told.
Yeah.
I don't want to confirm that but yeah. Then again, no one from including my dad, no one from the 86-87 team is associated with the team anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess the Pete Roses of whatever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I mean, I just remember again. I mean, I guess from you growing up with them, because how old are you now, Ken?
47.
So when he started doing it, you were what?
Well, when he first started,
right?
I was not even I didn't.
Okay, so you were born after that.
Yeah.
So growing up, like, what was your experience? Did you ever get to go like in the press box? Did you ever listen to him as a kid?
Oh yeah, I used to go, and and obviously I'd stay. I'd have to wait around when the pregame or the postgame was over, and I'd help him carry the equipment out and stuff. But yeah, I'd get to go upstairs and stuff, and it was the old press box. It used to be across the way where the current one was or is, behind the benches now. Is where the benches are now.
Yeah.
There used to be a press box over there. Yeah. So I mean, I used to get to go up there, and then it was weird. Well, not weird, but then it was, all these years later, now I'm there because now I'm working.
Yeah.
And now here I am videoing next to him, basically, the game while he's talking about the game.
Does he still go to the games?
He still from time to time. He doesn't make it to all of them. Like when he first retired, he was going pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Now it depends on the night. Sometimes it's a better game or something, or maybe a Norwich or Middlebury comes over. It's a little more of a rivalry type thing. Or of course the Oswego game occasionally, and stuff like that. But he doesn't go to all of them as much as they used to. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, I just remember you'd leave the parking lot, and of course it wasn't a fast way to get out of the parking lot back then. So you just turn on Wiring and you listen to the post game.
Yeah.
And I think everybody in the crowd had on Wiring. Like I think everybody leaving. It's like if you weren't on 1340 listening to Ducky Drake do what call whatever, and they always replay the goals.
Yeah.
So it was he had a good animated they score and I just again it was just very nostalgic, but it's so cool. Did you ever go to any of the away games with them? Or was that pretty much like
once? I don't even remember where we were. I want to say it was in Massachusetts. was still in school, then like high school type, so I don't remember exactly where we were or whatever, but I did travel with him one time. And I do remember we stayed in a hotel, and he would, he'd begin, and because people would always ask me, like, how does he remember all these things? How does he know all these players' names? And we're talking about the visiting team. After a while,
Yeah,
of course,
absolutely.
the team you cover. But he didn't very often have to look down and look at, number 24 for Elmira, where no one knows who that guy is. So he didn't, but I remember him kind of like, he had some papers out, and he wrote things down. And I think he was kind of like doing
I'm
a
sure
little
he's-
research and studying
I was
and
gonna say,
making
I'm
sure
sure
he
he
goes
studied.
through the names. And maybe there's names that, and I still have this to this day is, there's names I'll see on a high school roster. And I'll be like, oh God, I'm going to mess that one up. That's like a tough one. So if I can, I'll try to ask, how do you say that person's name? And
Yeah.
sometimes I have no choice.
the
And I have to go on
phonetic
air.
spelling down.
Yeah. And there's times I've definitely gone on air and said it wrong. I had this one girl who played softball for Peru. I knew her grandparents. And she graduated. Or actually, like her last game ever. And her grandparents came up to me after the game. They're like, by the way, we never told you, but you've been saying her last name wrong this whole time. I'm like, I know you. You didn't correct me for like 2 years ago. So I'm like, I always tell people, I go, please, if I say it wrong, let me know. I will try to correct it the next time.
And it's so tough, especially when you have some like Canadian, but like French Canadian names, and
Yeah.
sometimes they just like pronunciate a little bit different. There's people I know that when they say their name, I'm like, I've been saying it wrong, and
Yep.
then they're like, yeah, it's okay. They don't correct it.
Right,
So
yeah.
It's like with me, the amount of people that will say something to me or misspell my name, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's not.
I will
it's all
say
good.
I always prefer people to tell me in person, mostly because I want to hear them say it.
Yeah.
If they send me an email, I still feel like I need to be 100% sure. Okay, you're sending it to me in this, you're telling me to say it this way. I still want to kind of hear you say it so I know I'm 100% saying it the way you're trying to correct me.
How is it? So I've kind of used this, analogy sometimes when business and stuff, but when you like being a newscaster in a small area like this, you're probably as close to a celebrity locally as you can probably get, just because people see you. Because if you say like who's the most recognizable person in, the North Country, I would argue that maybe the top 5 people, a couple of them are newscasters of some sort
Yeah,
that
I
are
would
recognizable. Do you find that weird? Like when you go places, people are like, that's Ken, or
It used to. I think now I go to, anywhere I go now, I go fairly regularly enough that everyone already just either already knew who I was beforehand
Yeah.
or knows who I am now. And I think early on when it was weird because I'd go out to, a restaurant or anywhere with some friends or whatever. And some people would actually come up to me. I've had people ask to take a picture with me, which I always thought was weird.
Yeah.
Anytime everyone said the word celebrity, I always make a face like, I don't know about that. I guess I appreciate it, but I don't know if that's necessarily, true. But I always jokingly say, I'm like an F-list celebrity. Like it's way down there.
Yeah.
It's not. But I'll always remember there was one time, there's 2 people over at a table a little ways away. And I just happened to look over at this, just kind of looking around while I'm talking to people. And I look over and just happen to see at the same time, I see this one girl, say to her husband, boyfriend, I don't know what, and she whispers something to him. And he turns around, he looks at me, he looks back at her and shakes his head, yes. So I'm assuming this, because they were looking, and they were like, is that Ken Drake? It looks like it, type thing and stuff like that. And I always thought that was a little bit weird. I'm like, I don't know. But I mean, I will always say that for that reason, not that I'm not a crazy daredevil guy to begin with, but I will say that for the most part, I do tend to try to be a little extra cautious of what if I'm out in public. Because you never know.
Yeah.
You do one little funny thing that someone takes the wrong way or something, and all of a sudden,
or someone takes a video of you and like, here's the newscaster.
Well, I've
like,
always said too, phones have completely changed everyone's lives to begin with, but now anyone can pull out a phone and take a quick picture or something and take it out of context and
Yeah, I just didn't. Yeah, because you always see that. And it was funny. I was at the Plattsburgh State basketball game last weekend, and a couple little kids run up to the players and get their autograph after the game. And at the end of the day, it's. And I remember as a kid, like the skate with the Cardinals, you get the autographs in the program and stuff. And now you start to know some of the guys that you got autographs as a kid because you're just a little guy. But it's like, especially what you like. I'm sure like little kids, like, oh my god, he's the guy I see on like I run ads on YouTube, and people are like, I see you on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, like. But it's the same idea. It's like, oh, now you're this known person, and people will like stop me like, hey, I know you from somewhere, and I'm like, Probably from YouTube or like probably from the news.
Well,
Like,
that's the funny thing is I will get that sometimes. So people, I'll be talking to someone and they're like, "I'm really sorry, but you look so familiar, and I can't place why." And I'll kind of like, I don't purposely like to go, "Well, I'm on the news," I don't do that. I'm like, and I'll kind of like, I'm not gonna make them like think about it for a while. I'm like, do you watch TV? I'll always say just TV first, and some will pick it up right away.
Yeah.
And some will like, yes or no or whatever. I'm like, well, do you watch local news or whatever? And then they'll start to get the idea, like, oh yes, okay, yeah. So
I think there was, I forgot who it was. It was two actors, and one of them was Matt Damon. And I can't remember if it was someone mistaken Matt Damon for another actor. So like, oh my God, that's, Ben Affleck or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Matt Damon. So Matt actually like signed the autograph Ben Affleck and just gave it to the kid and walked away because they didn't know who it was. So it's like,
Right.
But it's just kind of funny because I think at that point they're like, this is useless. Like here's my
Right.
thing, but I'll
Yeah.
sign it whoever. So question I had, so sports memorabilia collecting.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a hobby, interest, or hidden talent? Are you talented at finding good deals? Or good...
I don't know, probably not that. That started actually mostly with my dad. For me, he's got so much great stuff, and there's an actual baseball room, we call it.
Now, what's his team? Yankees?
He's Red Sox.
Red Sox. Okay.
Yep. So he's got a lot, but he has all sorts of basically, if you're a Hall of Famer, he probably has at least one or two things of you, if not 10 or 12. I mean, unfortunately, when a Hall of Famer passes away,
Yeah.
one of the first things he does is he'll look and go, how many did I have of that? And he actually will sometimes do a little shrine to that particular person, which is cool with some of the
wild.
memorabilia he has. But yeah, he's been collecting stuff for a long time. I've jumped on that, in the last 10 or so years. I'm actually a Mets fan.
Okay.
And,
well, I apologize on that.
Yeah. And I know for the most part, that's never a good thing or fun.
I mean, I'm an Expos fan, so we never did any better. But
Right.
Yeah.
But so I bring that up because I started collecting the 1986, the last World Series they won was 1986. A lot of great players on that team. And I started collecting baseballs signed by each individual player that was on that team.
Wow.
Now, each individual baseball, not like some people do an entire team on a baseball. I do, each one has to be their own, and it has to be not only their autograph, but it has to at least say 86 World Series champs, 86. I have some that say 86 WS, champs.
So you have to write it on there.
Some form of recognizing they were also on that team.
Gotcha. Okay.
I've got most of them. I'm pretty close.
Really? I'm
down
bringing
to-
up
I can tell you.
this is going to be a throwback. 'Cause
Oh, yeah,
This is before my time, but some of these guys definitely played long enough that I would have known their names.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some good ones on there. I think Gary Carter's the only Hall of Famer on that team. And he was the toughest to get because he had passed away before I got it. But I found his in a shop, a shop in Cooperstown. My dad and I go to Cooperstown for almost every year now for Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And it was, they had one that said Gary Carter, 86 World Series champs. And I'm like, well, I got to get this. I mean, I may never see this again.
Actually,
I think he's the only one of the players that has passed. One of their coaches actually just passed
I'm
recently.
wondering what because Gary Carter is bold, so I'm wondering because Dwight Gooden too, and he was obviously
I have a good one. The biggest name on that list that I
Lenny
do not-
Dystra. Wow,
I have two Lenny Dykstras. I forgot that I had him already. So I've
Daryl
got,
Strawberry.
I have a Daryl Strawberry. I got a picture with him. He was my favorite player on that team.
Wow.
The one I don't have, and a lot of Seinfeld fans I guess might appreciate this. I do not have Keith Hernandez. He's easily the biggest name I don't have.
Never able to track. Is he live? So
Yeah, he does play-by-play for the Mets games. So I mean,
that's right.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay, yeah.
so it's just one of those. I have an autograph of him on a bat, but not which I got in Montreal actually at an Expos game. But I do not have him on a baseball like I have with the rest of the guys. Although after him, it's down to a lot of obscure guys like that relief pitcher that only pitched like 6 innings.
But
or
you're
something.
trying to get all these guys.
I'm trying to get them all.
How do you track them down?
It's not easy. I would say I have gotten more. I've had to buy more of them in a shop or something. Again, in Cooperstown, they all come with the certificate of authenticity and such. But I've probably only gotten a handful in person, unfortunately. But some of them have visited Cooperstown, which is great. I've gotten
cool.
Daryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden in person, Lenny Dykstra in person twice. Apparently, I mean, he's memorable enough. I don't know how.
So that's obviously the goal is to get it in person.
I'd love to get him in person.
Yeah.
Sure. George Foster got traded during that year. and he was on
you
the
still
team,
got him?
but he got a ring. I said it's kind of one of those things. If you got a ring, then I want.
Oh, you get a ring if even if you're
As
traded.
long as you're parted on, as long as if you're a part of that team at any time, you could play one game.
I didn't know
If
that.
you were part of that team, you still get a ring.
Is that consistent across pretty much all sports?
I believe so. I looked it up for
Oh, I
baseball.
never knew that.
So George Foster got traded during that season.
Okay.
And he was in Cooperstown and signing autographs. But he was very, very well known as a not a Hall of Famer, but as a Cincinnati Red, big time player for them. And I said to my dad, I'm like, I really want to get him. I go, but he got traded that year. I'm like, I don't know if he's gonna. And so I asked someone ahead of time, like, oh yeah. And of course, it was a little bit of, if you pay him, he'll put whatever you want on that baseball. So, and he did. He signed it, and he was really nice about it. Actually, he didn't give me a hard time or anything. So,
Do you? I mean, how many of these guys do you recognize, or is it only like when you stumble across them and you're like, "That's that guy"?
it's so I got 5 of them recently. A year and a half ago or so, they were doing but there was about 5 of them that were doing a signing down in New York City.
Okay.
Went down for a
Down
game.
a city?
Yeah, went down to a game and stuff.
Yep.
And they happened to be nearby at a local community college or something. They had a big memorabilia card show thing, and then 7 or 8 different players were signing autographs that day as well. And 5 of them I didn't have yet. So I'm thinking, oh, this is like a jackpot. I can get 5 in one shot and actually get them in person.
And they
which
all
was
have to be
even
on,
better.
on a baseball.
Yep. I
Okay.
always get them on a baseball. And so it was funny because you said, how many do I recognize? And of course, 86 was not yesterday.
Yeah.
At
Yeah, I
this
was gonna
point,
say, these
we're
guys are old, right?
37 years ago now. So
I mean, these guys are all
when I see them,
mid-60s now.
yeah, most of them, when I see them, they still resemble what they looked like, obviously a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
There was 1 or 2 that I look at and go, ooh, he didn't age quite as well as some do. But but for the most part, they all look pretty much like they did. Yeah.
Speaking of '86, I remember going to a Vermont. It might have even been Expos at the time before the Lake Monsters, and Bill Buckner was there because I think,
Really? Okay.
did Bill play in that farm system at one point? There had to be some reason he was connected to the team.
I don't possibly. I know that the Vermont Expos / Lake Monsters, organization has had some ties to, obviously they're a New England state. So I think they have brought in, they've had the word, like when the Red Sox started winning some World Series, 04 and 07 and so on. And I know they did end up having days where those trophies would be at Centennial Field.
Yeah.
So I think they've kind of still, even though they were never affiliated with the Red Sox, I don't think, because they also were affiliated with the Reds and the Mariners way back in the day. Ken Griffey Jr. played here for like a week and a half. Barry Larkin played here for a summer.
What are they tied with right now?
They're no longer affiliated.
Okay,
They were affiliated with Oakland most recently.
Oakland, yeah, because that was the last one. I remember.
And I believe it's now been 2 or 3 seasons. I should know this, but at least 2 years that they have no longer been affiliated. They've actually joined the Futures League, which is mostly a higher tier college summer league. But they've always tried to keep some kind of Red Sox roots, if you will, to it.
They were single
So-
A though, right? Or were they double?
They were double. So going way back, for there was the Vermont Reds and there were the Vermont Mariners. We're talking going back to the 80s and the
that's
90s. They were double A at one time. When the Montreal Expos were affiliated with them, and then the Oakland Athletics, they were a single A. Single A short season is what it's considered, which was
Okay.
the lowest of all of them. And actually, part of the reason they're no longer affiliated is 3 or 4 years ago, Major League Baseball decided they wanted to cut down across the board for all 30 teams. And you're only allowed to have, I think every team had like 6 minor league teams.
Yeah.
And of course, as you worked your way up to AAA, that's as close you wanted to get, or you could get before going to the majors. And they kind of cut all that back. So unfortunately, for the Oakland organization at the time, that was one of the ones that they had to cut. So
Wow.
that's
Vermont Lake Monsters still
they
fun
still
baseball.
draw very well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad price to go catch for a game in the summer, but their fans are coming out, and they do have a lot. They actually have started to have a lot of local guys, more Vermont guys, of course, but on the team too. So that brings in some people too. But yeah, it's a fun atmosphere and stuff for anyone that wants to go check out a game in the summer.
And we ended up, so Bill Buckner was there, so I have an autograph of Bill Buckner on a baseball someplace that I think it's still at my parents' house. But what is your favorite autograph? Like that collectively, I mean, obviously collectively, that's your
Right.
That's the goal. Is any of those stick out as your favorite, or do you have someone else? You're like,
Yeah, I will say really quick, I have Bill Buckner as well, but it's signed by both Bill Buckner and Mookie Wilson.
Wow.
Which is
okay.
interesting because of the whole play in the 86 where the ball went Mookie Wilson.
Who signed it first?
I said that to my dad when he gave it to me. I said, I'm going to guess Bill Buckner signed this first.
That's what would have been my guess, yeah.
So I do have that, which is kind of funny. But no, easily my favorite autograph, and this is another thing that's probably you asked me earlier about one of my biggest moments as far as, things I've gotten to do through my job. I actually jokingly tell people sometimes I peaked when I was 6 weeks old.
Okay.
When I was 6 weeks old, Hank Aaron was playing in Cooperstown, Doubleday Field, Hall of Fame weekend. My dad actually went down because he was working. He was doing radio.
Wow.
For at the event, and my mom was there, and I was there obviously too. And there's a picture of Hank Aaron holding me at 6 weeks old in front of the dugout. And he's in full uniform, and he's just kind of going like this. And we have gotten it signed since the picture, and my dad got one blown up, and actually got it signed, that one signed as well and stuff. So I mean, that's
oh my god.
So I always say,
absolutely,
I got to be held by the greatest home run hitter of all time. I stand by that still to this day, Barry Bonds. Sorry,
yeah,
but that's obviously a pretty cool moment. One I'll never remember, but I got to see the picture. That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Oh my, yeah. Well, that's. I was gonna say I don't from like a. Memorabilia. I've never collected when I was a kid. Again, a bunch of expos and stuff, and I think the most. I'm trying to think of like some unique autographs I have. One of the most unique ones, I have Charles Barkley's autograph.
Oh, that's cool.
But I got it at a golf tournament.
Okay,
which is weird because he's a big golfer. But
yeah.
I just remember, so. When I was a kid, I still love golf, but I went to a few majors as a kid, and my all-time favorite baseball player is Vladimir, and actually he's the only autograph I have at this building. I have a bat in there that he signed at the Hall of Fame in 2018, but I have a bunch when he was a kid, playing with the Expos. But Charles Barkley, we were at Baltusrol, which is a golf course in New Jersey for the 2000, I think it was 5 PGA. And we were walking, and he just happened to stop, and Charles Barkley cut across. We were basically going like this because he was walking to like the TNT media tent or something because he was doing whatever, probably just jokingly doing play-by-play or whatever. And he stopped, and obviously a big guy, and signed the flag. So he signed a golf flag that I have a bunch of other pros that signed it. And I think it was my dad asked him, he's like, "How's the golf game?" He said, as he signed, he's like, "Not good," and just like handed it back. He was nice though. He just kind of smirked and kind of had like a little chuckle. He's like, "Not good," and then he kept walking. But that was like, I always think of like when you think of like celebrity sightings. I've never run into a celebrity. When you just like randomly run into them and they're not. It wasn't like you bought a show or a ticket to go watch them.
You weren't expecting to see, yeah.
Yeah, and I even I went to like a Knicks basketball game, and I remember seeing like a couple celebrities that were at the basketball game. I'm like, that doesn't count because they're like you expect them to go to games like that.
Yeah.
So Charles Barkley was probably the closest, even though it does make sense why he was there. But I just out of context, I'm like, why would I ever see Charles Barkley at a golf tournament?
Right.
I mean, now he's more tied into golf, but still, that's kind of like he's a Hall of Famer, right? Yeah,
yeah,
he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. NBA, not PGA. Yeah,
NBA. Yeah,
that's for sure.
He probably will make the PGA for some random reason. Right. But so then the other thing, useless trivia was your other thing that you have. Are you a trivia guy? When you say useless trivia, is this like trivia games, or if I just asked you a random thing, you're like, I probably
won't know the answer. That's the funny thing.
Are you like a Jeopardy guy, kind of?
No, I'm definitely not that smart.
Okay.
I got through college and everything, but no. If I've ever watched Jeopardy, I'm the guy that maybe comes away with $500.
Okay. You're in the red.
Yeah, I'm not doing well. Yeah, I watch Kids Jeopardy, the juniors or whatever they call it.
I thrive on those.
I'm not great at. I'm better on that, but I'm not. Those kids can beat me as well.
I also get excited. I'm like, I might know a couple of these. And
no, useless trivia. I feel like, and I couldn't even give you one off the top of my head because ever since I put that on there, I've actually been trying to think. I'm like, in case he asked me, I should come up with something, and I can't.
This is your teleprompter where you're like, shoot, I shouldn't put that in the show notes.
Right. I should cross that out. Yeah. But it's just one of those things where like all of a sudden out of nowhere, someone will bring up something. And I'll just say, "Oh yeah, wasn't it this?" And like, how would you know that? That's so weird or random.
Do you think it's a guy thing? Because my wife will sometimes be like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "I don't know." Yeah. I just you retain dumb stuff, and like there's like I'll hear something. I'm like, "Did you know?" Just like same thing. On the spot, I won't know, but like a random fact that people be like, "How would you actually know that?" I'm like, I don't know, but I know it, and it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make your life any better. But for a second, I'm like, "There's your fun fact of the day."
Yeah.
And I say that almost every day, some random thing.
And that's just it. Like you said, I can't on the spot. I probably can't come up with it, but just organically, it'll come out, and so that's when someone will go, "That's so random. Why would how would you know that?"
There was something the other day I heard where like you could. It was something with your body. You can't do. It was you couldn't do something with like either plugging. Oh, you can't hum if you plug your nose, which is random. So you try doing it, and
Sure.
you're like, God, I can't actually do it.
Right.
But it's like something that you would never know. I'm like, by the way, you can't hum when
Yeah.
you plug your nose. Like you just pinch your nose, and that'd be something I would say every day, and she'd be like, "What? How did it come up in conversation? Two, where'd you find that out?
Who's
I don't
the
know,
first
I don't know.
person that tried that and didn't realize that? But yeah,
I think about that all the time. I'm like, everything that's happened in the world, somebody was like the test dummy for it.
yeah.
And some are easy, but
Right.
like, who was the test dummy for every food that was ever eaten? Because at some point, someone's like, this could go one of two ways.
Right.
And we're going to roll the dice. Or they just like fed it to a rat or something, or a mouse.
I was a fairly picky eater especially when I was little, so I would not have been a good guinea pig for that. Yeah.
I always think that. I'm like, who was the first person that just tried to eat broccoli?
Is it kind of? I wonder if it's almost like when you're feeding a baby, like even baby food for the first time, you put it in their mouth, and you kind of wait for that reaction for that half second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when you go back and again think about this, like who was the first person that just thought of sports, like competition?
Right.
Because you go back, I mean, it had to be someone like, can you lift that, or can you like I can get there before you can.
It's just some form of competition, and of course, each sport was invented by someone, and from there they go, hey, this could be like a theme. We're all competing in different things, and
What's your favorite sport?
baseball.
Is it always been?
Yeah, I'd say probably from a young age. Yeah.
Because I think baseball.
I'm still waiting for my pro career to start. It hasn't happened.
I was gonna
yet.
keep trying though. I
Yeah.
think you got it. I think when I was a child, baseball was my thing. Again, I was a massive Expos fan. Still to this day, I'm an Expos fan. It's actually funny because the amount of people that I know from the late '90s, probably up until mid 2000s, is like, I mean, you just played so many sports video games. I watched so many games. I followed all the teams. Now, if I was to name 5 players in the league of baseball, I think I'd be doing well. Because I don't follow it. But I find that even baseball is a slower sport, but I think there's something nostalgic about it.
Yeah.
And is it the longest running sport, at least of the major sports?
I would think so. Hockey might be up there, but
Because I think just from a history standpoint, I think it has to do with statistics.
yeah, I'm a big statistics guy.
Because there's so
too.
many records, and I mean, there's a lot of statistics in, I guess, in every sport. But if you really look at it, I mean, there's almost too many in baseball.
Yeah. Oh no, they can give you talk about useless trivia, useless facts, and
Yeah.
there's things like when they'll tell you, oh well, so and so is undefeated when he pitches during the daytime in Texas in June. I mean, who pays attention to that?
So
kind of
I'm
stuff?
actually, do you know how they come up with those stats?
Elias, well, in baseball's case, Elias Sports keeps track of anything that's ever happened in since the
So
dawn
they
of
just
time
plug
somehow.
into that, and then they just will spit out a stat for them.
Yeah, and that's
Because it's got to be automated. It's not like someone's like, we're in June. Like, what's fun, like a June stat I could pull up?
right.
And it's also got to be relevant to the game.
Sure.
So like you just pull up a stat and be like, this guy one time hit 3 home runs and he's never hit a home run this game, or a pitcher or something. I think from a professional baseball standpoint, like my mind always goes back to, again, I'm talking probably like a 10-year span. I watched a lot of baseball. The 1998 home run race sticks out.
Sure.
Then the World Series, which actually, not World Series, scratch that. I do know a lot of World Series stuff, but the perfect games, the back-to-back games, seasons. So it was David Wells and David Cohn. So it was 98, 99, I think.
That's probably right. Yeah.
Did you watch the Yogi Berra documentary
I have
on
not.
Netflix?
No.
So they go into it, and I just remember when they started, the documentary is amazing for anybody that wants to watch it, but they go and they start, and I didn't know the backstory as much on Yogi. I knew he was good, but he's obviously all-time great, and I didn't know the clash with Steinbrenner, and I didn't know all this stuff. So the first time, and I'm it's history, folks. I'm not like ruining anybody's spoiler alert here. But the first time he came back to Yankee Stadium was on Yogi Berra Day.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was the day David Cohn threw the perfect game. And I'm watching, and which was funny, So I'm watching the documentary with my wife, and I'm sitting there, and they're like, "Yep, Yogi Berra Day," and it was like, I don't know, July something, 1999 versus Montreal Expos. 'Cause I remember they threw it against the Expos, and I remember stopping. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is David Cohn's perfect game," and my wife's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Well, first off, this has been like ingrained in my head because I was big into baseball at the time." But I didn't realize that Don Larson and him both went out and they threw the ceremonial first pitch of that game. Yogi Berra Day. So
that's
Don
so
Larson
funny.
threw with the Yogi, and then they ended up, and they were actually down. I don't remember where they were watching it, but they went into the locker room after the game, the two of them, and obviously perfect game. Don Larson being the only World Series perfect game,
Right.
caught by Yogi. It was incredible. I think you would really like it,
Yeah.
but. It was just funny, like how much you remember, and I'm like, "Yep, I remember the last out was a pop up to third base." I'm like, "Sure enough, there it is," and it's just funny what gets ingrained in your mind, especially sports. I think sports have a way of just like, and maybe this is like a dude thing, but you retain these little like nuances of sports, and like I just remember the bounce, the hop, the player, the team, the jersey. I can't explain
It's
it.
like it's an unscripted. I mean, for theater people, it's an unscripted show that's about to happen. Sure, if you go to a play or something, yeah, there's entertainment value to it. But the people involved know what's going to happen from the moment the curtain opens
Yeah.
to this one. Doesn't mean in this case it's a show. Not every show is a great one. Sometimes there's blowouts and bad games and all that stuff. But there's always those moments then that just like you said, you'll remember for specific reasons, and you never know when you go to a game or watch a game that you could end up seeing history.
So because I think sports are unique in that, because one, obviously they tie people together. There's a competitive aspect. I think a lot of sports, though, like the football playoffs are going on right now. So you see like a team lose, or a team wins. You take like Detroit. Detroit hasn't won in forever, and they win a game, and there's literally like people treating that as the Super Bowl, and they literally just made the playoffs, which is wild. And then you have on the opposite end, you have like Philadelphia yesterday, like fans going crazy, and they played in the Super Bowl last year. But it's people get tied to the team, and I think what happens is when you really start to I saw what was I think it was Detroit winning, and there was like grown men in the stands crying.
Yeah, well, they had there was a guy at the game who apparently had been like a season ticket holder since basically their inception, and he's now like 87 years old or whatever. And they actually showed him. He was practically a celebrity. We were talking about how there's celebrities at games all the time. He might as well have been one because I think they showed Eminem was there too. But you're right. At the end of the game, because they said it's been 30 something years since they won a playoff game.
Yeah,
and they did show people doing that, and probably partly because, and I'll actually go back to the Red Sox in 2004 winning the World Series.
Yeah, I remember
and
that very well. There
were so many Red Sox fans that thought they would never, ever get to see that. Mm-hmm. And, of course, then they got hot and they went on a nice little run. But that was a huge deal. Like, you didn't realize that, losing this curse of the Bambino or whatever, and losing in 86 to the Mets, and then, to another losing here.
Using Yankees in 03.
The year before on a walk-off home run.
Aaron Boone, yep.
And everyone's like this. And then even the year they finally win it. Talk about going back to theater and almost the curse.
down 3-0.
They're down 3-0. No one's ever come back from that ever in history.
Yeah,
and then So.
I think a lot of it has to do with the nostalgia aspect of. If you think about a lot of sports, one, it could be your home team, which is part of it. And like Detroit, like they're like, we just lose and now we're winning, and it's like collectively, even the players. I think they interviewed one of the guys. It wasn't Jared Goff. It was I don't remember the name, but kind of a younger guy. I think he was probably a defender or a linebacker.
He's from the area.
Yeah,
Aiden Hutchinson, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so and he's basically like, you could see him getting emotional, and they started showing photos of him in like Detroit Lions gear as a kid growing up. And here you win it, and you could tell in his voice and stuff that it was like almost like his high school team winning. Like it was very weird because he's obviously like the pinnacle of football. But I think a lot of it has to do with your hometown, but there's a nostalgic aspect of like. A lot of the teams I watch now were passed to me from my dad, and were passed to him from his dad, and I think it just naturally happens because you grow up watching what your dad grew up watching, and then that you just somehow, and some kids deviate, or you could be a Giants fan and start watching the Patriots because of Tom Brady and all that, but there's a lot of people that just have this bond over generations. So like I think when a team wins, it's like, oh, especially these guys, like I grew up watching it with my grandpa, and he never watched it. So I think there's a lot of ties with sports because people connect to it like a community. And I think when you start unpacking the layers, and you could even do it on like a local level. Like a high school team wins a state championship. Like that's a big. I mean, I went to Shazy, so we've won take soccer, won a lot.
Yeah.
I remember the first one. I remember all the years we went and didn't win, and like I remember rushing I was at ninth grade, I think, the first year we won, and I remember I was on the team. I remember rushing the field because I knew a lot of guys on the team, but you were just sitting there with like your uncles and your grandparents and people that had played that like were there and like we've never done this before, and we like knocked on the door, and then you see the Osable Valley girls win, Mariah, PHS soccer, Mariah basketball, like. There's some teams that win that have never have done it before, and it's so cool to see. And I think when you get to at least local sports, I think everybody wants to beat each other for the most part. And I think once teams start to get to, like into the state playoffs, and maybe not at a younger age, but I think older people realize like everybody now becomes an Osable Valley, sports fan when they're in the state finals. Like because you at the end of the day, you really root for the region. Yeah. I think in sports.
Oh, I think a lot of people. I've heard a lot of people say, now they're our team. Now we're going to follow them and stuff like that. And it's really unique because, and I've actually told people because I get to see it from both sides. Is so Vermont, for example, when their high school regular season ends, they go right to a state tournament. They're a smaller state. Yeah. So they have a 16-team bracket in some of them, and they'll whittle their way down, of course, to a state champion. Whereas New York, having been a bigger state, we have to have a region. We have to find out who's the best just in our area to then go into the state tournament and stuff like that. And I tell people, I said, I hate to take Shazy for granted because they're just so good. And Rob McAuliffe will tell you, from day one of preseason, the goal is to get to the Final Four. Yeah. And
I'll correct you. A state championship.
He's told me only Final Four, but I feel like he really wants a state championship.
He's being modest, but but the thing was the culture of that. It went to like get to the Final Four, and then it was like then once you won, it was like we're trying to win every year. Yeah. And you could have a team that's not good, and they're like, well, we're not that good, and we want to try to get back to the Final Four. But I'm like, in the back of their mind, it's state championship. But I think and some people like. You could say what you want, but I think at a certain point, it's like anything in life. Like you raise the level, you raise your floor, now your expectation. So I think a lot of, and you like seeing this, I think all across the sports is that Section 7 sports has, in my opinion, has elevated tremendously over the last 10 to 15 years. I remember, back when I played, I remember Peru winning the state championship, right, in football?
Football, yeah.
2001,
I believe is right, yeah.
Yeah, and then I remember Mariah won a basketball one early on in 2000s, and I think the coach now is retiring. That might have been one of his first years, right? The Mariah basketball coach?
Yeah, I think that's right. I went to one where they lost the championship game, I know, too.
Because
he's had a lot of good teams.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else. But, yeah, I was trying to remember at one point and try to go back and figure out how many team state championships we've had. I say team because there's also the individuals. For example, a track athlete might win a state championship individually. Of course, the school they represent doesn't necessarily get the credit for it. But it's not as many as people think. And at the same time, there's more than people think. It's kind of weird to say it that way.
Yeah.
No, I think some people are like, again, Shazy, and they won a lot. They've now won 10. I was at this one this past year.
Yeah. You did a good job on that one.
And that was just it's someone. Again, we kind of take. It's unfortunate, and I feel bad to say this. I feel like we take Shazy for granted a little because you just know that they're probably going to be in that final final game of the year. Yeah, it's just almost. And most schools are hoping to get. Most schools are going to our goal is to make it to the tournament.
Yeah,
they're like, forget just making it there. We need to go beyond that. And I feel like we take it for granted a little bit, but. And yeah, they've won 10 of the last. I actually counted. They've now won, including COVID not having a season. Mm-hmm. Since their first ever, they've won 10 of the last 19.
Yeah,
that is hard to do.
I think when I had Rob on the podcast, I think when I looked up the stats at the time, he had a 33% percentage of winning a state championship in all the years he coached, and that's not counting Final Four and stuff. But and I think Rob, I can't say enough good things about Rob. I grew up, coached with him, and but I think when you start to get to these players, like you mentioned Northeastern, like Rob Guerin's the coach there. Rob coached me 1 year, and we won the sectional championship in basketball. had only been done at Shazy, I think, like 2 times prior or 3 times prior in history, and it hasn't happened since.
Right.
And we were athletes, but I was middle of the pack there. I'm gonna say I had some good athletes on my team, but it really, like, that was coaching. And when you start to look at, certain coaches that year over year can produce, he went to the boys team, won a bunch, then he switched to the girls, now they're winning. And you take the, and I think, the Mariah coach for basketball, I don't know his name, but he's done, fantastic there. But you look at a lot of these coaches that really make a difference on teams. I remember we played Chattagay in basketball, and they were good every year. And they won the state championship, I think, my senior year. The same thing, just very well coached, very fundamentally sound. Weren't flashy. And I think Mariah's probably the same. Probably not a flashy team, but just fundamentally very good.
I just got to see them play the other day. They are pretty good. I mean, the funny thing too is it's a bunch of football guys that are really good at football.
They have a good football team, yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're really good at basketball too.
Yeah. It's and I mean, I watch Plattsburgh State right now. The basketball team, like Dylan Trombley's on the team, and he was I didn't know this at the time, but was like a reigning player of the year in the state, and very good athlete. And I think he's a grad student now. But yeah, they produce. It's just, I mean, when you start to see these like mini dynasties, or I guess you call them dynasties locally, but I just think the level gets raised every year. So when you start looking at, I mean, I think Section 7 is more competitive now than it's ever been. You start, I mean, you could see like some teams always were the top team, and now I see that they kind of bounce around a little bit more, which is cool. It's kind of neat. And I think from your perspective, getting to see all these teams, it's kind of, you don't have like a favorite team. Like you try to be. Where'd you go to high school? PHS?
Plattsburgh, yeah.
So maybe you root a little bit for deep down in your heart. But
I always tell people, I said the schools are like my kids. I root for them all to do well.
Yeah.
But in the end, I don't mind seeing Plattsburgh win.
Yeah, it's not going to break your heart.
Right,
but I think like it's kind of cool because I remember Joey LaFranca came on, and Joey does a lot of photography and stuff. And I asked Joey, and he's like, and I think Joey went to Seton.
Yeah.
But Joey said the same thing. He goes, you know what? He goes, it's kind of like I have a lot of favorite teams, so I get spoiled because like when they go to the state, some teams are going to go to the state, so you get an extended season every season.
Yep.
So I mean, do you have a favorite sports season?
Favorite sports season?
I'll tell you, I know my least favorite, but I
could tell you my least favorite, and it's not any team or sport's fault, but it's the spring.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And it's because of the weather. Largely the weather for me, because I said way earlier, I'm playing my schedule, sometimes a week in advance or something, and all of a sudden I get to that day and I don't know what's being played because every field is washed out because of the snow and the water.
And then they all get made up, and now you have 6 games on a night, and you're like, I can't get to these.
Right. I don't know if I have a favorite, I guess, basically of the other two between fall and winter. I will say winter's the toughest / busiest.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the longest, and the end is the busiest.
And it's always dark out.
Yes.
You go in and come out, it's dark. I think my favorite, I've always loved the fall just because I was, you kind of get kicked into it. But I truly believe like the winter sports season is always the culmination of sports because it's in the middle, but I think everybody kind of like, I've always felt this, that when you get like the fall, you start in the summer, you get into the fall, it's typically a shorter season.
Yeah.
And then you start to get to the winter sport, but I feel like people at that point, there's a difference between basketball, it's indoors. Like soccer and football, which I love, but you're further out. And I feel like when it's basketball, people are more on top of you. It's more intimate. It's more... I think the spring season, number one, because it's the end of the school year, and I think a lot of people are starting to check out, and I think it doesn't carry as much weight. And the seasons, it's like you said, it's a short season that's condensed even more, purely based on rescheduling.
Yeah.
I just think this, hockey. I think hockey's kind of the same way. Basketball's kind of the same way. Everybody's indoors on top of each other in a good way, meaning it just feels more.
I think
loud.
It adds the atmosphere.
Yeah. Like basketball atmosphere is tough to beat, in my opinion.
I actually went to Beekmantown, Saranac boys hockey are two of the best teams in our. They were last year, and they are again this year. And they played each other right before the new year, right before the end of the year. And they played AC North because that's Saranac's home ice, and they were the home team. Now it's a small little rink for anyone that ever been. It doesn't hold a lot.
There's
of
only
people.
seats on one side, right?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
And yet that place was packed.
Yeah.
Every seat was taken. People were standing around the behind the goals and stuff like that. And usually don't see that in a lot of high school hockey games. They did have another game shortly after that where they also did a big event, and it was packed. And it was one of those things where you're like, it's almost too bad we couldn't use the field house. So
Well-
perfect transition. They're playing each other tonight at the field house.
Are you going to that game?
Yeah.
I was gonna see if we can see. Yeah, I was trying to look for. But yeah, I think when you look at especially as a kid, when you start to go watch like the really good teams play, and like one of my favorite is section. Well, they don't do it anymore. I think at the. Oh no, do they? No, they don't at the field house. Where do they do sectionals for basketball now?
Sectionals have been moved to Clinton Community.
Okay, so I remember them back at the field house, the
Yep.
big bleachers. The amount of people that would pack that gym for sectional basketball was insane. And again, I went to Shazy. Our teams didn't really make it that often, so usually just went and watched teams play. And
Right.
there's always like PHS, Northeastern was always in there, and I have like. I just love the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's high school basketball. But you go in there, I'm like, I feel like I'm at a college game right now. Like, and not like Placer State College. Like, I'm talking like you almost feel like a D1 college school because there's just almost the entire communities are there.
Right. Well, there was the year that Plattsburgh High School hosted Glens Falls, and I
The
forget-
Gerard kid?
and Gerard came up, and
Yeah.
everyone knew about it. I had never seen that place that busy. You almost, I'm exaggerating a little, sure, but it was almost like you were at the Dome in Syracuse where he
Yeah.
eventually was going because. Didn't
they pull bleachers out for that,
They
too?
had to pull out extra bleachers for that and stuff, and it was just unbelievable in a good way. But it was like, oh wow,
How many points did he score that game? Quite a bit.
I think he went over 30.
Yeah.
High 20s at least, maybe 30 though.
Yeah.
He had one shot that most kids wouldn't take, like a pretty deep 3-pointer. I remember him making it. And I'm like, oh wow.
Probably routine.
Yeah.
Who's the from all the interviews you've had to do? Who is there an interview like? Who's the most famous person you think you've interviewed, sports wise?
Ooh, most famous person?
Like well known, I guess.
Trying to think. I've always tell people I've interviewed a lot of people of all ages and stuff, or different reasons and stuff. I've gotten to interview some pro athletes, which is cool. Mike Ruzioni, I got to do a little walk around with him. Him and his family returned to Lake Placid this past summer.
Recently
and
you did it.
Just this past couple months ago, and in fact his daughter had never been. A couple
that's
members
cool.
of he had his grandchildren with him. Most had never been, and it's funny. We walk into so we get to do a little tour with him, and we're walking into the rink, and one of them goes, "Papa, is that your rink?"
He's up in the rafter. I mean, he's on the board.
Yeah, all the guys, and you hear his wife go, "Well, it's not our rink," but it was just funny. I mean, he's definitely up there. It just kind of because of the history that
he's
he
almost
has.
70 now.
Yeah, and I've gotten to talk to a couple guys on that team, a couple pro athletes, which is really cool. I've interviewed my dad when he
Really?
retired. I did a piece on him. Yep, which was actually kind of interesting. And actually, the funny thing is, known him my whole life, obviously at that point, I still learned things during that interview, so that was
Yeah.
kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's one that stands out, but there's been a lot of good ones.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the 1980 guys, just because of the area, has got to be. I think if you interview any of those guys, I mean, it's funny because Olympic hockey overall is like nowadays it's the Olympics still, but it's not as big of a deal as it was back then.
Right.
Or at least I guess the magnitude of that victory. And I think what was it? Was it Sports Illustrated? Someone ranked it like the greatest sports moment in history. Now, obviously, it's a U.S. moment.
Sure.
But,
yeah. I mean, I think it's funny because I think it's kind of cool to hear people say that nationally.
Yeah.
And of course, it was for the nation. It was USA hockey.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I think it's seen differently for a lot of people from around here, especially people that were alive during the game, during that game, maybe even at that game.
Did your dad go to it?
I'm not sure that he did.
I'm actually curious how many people went to the game, like local people that we would have known that,
Right.
like they're like, oh yeah, I was actually at the game.
Well, so it's funny because Taylor Viles, who's our other sports guy that I work with, was not even alive during the game, and he ends up getting a job up in this area, and his father was at that game.
That's crazy.
So it's just kind of funny how it all ties in.
Well, one of my favorite sports movies of all time is Miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you watch the movie too, and I think they did a pretty good job on it.
I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the players had some type of input in it, right?
I think they did. Yeah, I know. I have going back again to DVDs, but I have the DVD of it, and there's bonus features and stuff on there that actually Herb Brooks was part of. He was part of some of the
Yeah,
plan.
and he passed right before.
They actually said it. I think near the end of the movie, it says something of like along the lines of he didn't live to see the movie, but he lived the lived the moment.
It was
but
very like tearjerker when you get to that point.
Exactly.
Like, oh god.
Yeah. Right.
Because he passed away, I believe, in a car accident.
Yes, he was in a car. It was during the movie. Obviously, it started production, but obviously was not released yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was gonna say the 1980 team. That's and the jerseys too are iconic. I mean, it's just it's like such a funny. It's so funny that it happened like right around here. But Ken, is there anything? I'm gonna ask maybe one or two more questions, but is there anything in your sports career that's on your bucket list that you would like to do? I mean, going into a major sports parade, like being in the parade is still pretty cool.
That's
like,
pretty cool. I've never been to I've never been to
tough.
any form of a championship. I never got to go to a World Series, Stanley Cup, Super Bowl.
As a fan, either.
Yeah, as a fan at all,
Okay.
or just either or. It'd be kind of cool to obviously go to some of that to do something like that. That'd be probably one of my big ones, at least for a professional. I've done almost all the All-Star games, so that's almost done. I've done baseball All-Star game. I've done the Pro Bowl. I've done the NHL All-Star
You've been
game.
to them?
I've been to
as
them.
a reporter or as a fan?
Fan is all of them. I
Okay.
kind of want to just enjoy the moments.
yeah.
I haven't-
What All-Star game did you go to?
For baseball, Citi Field. The Mets hosted in 2013, 14, somewhere in there. Went to the Pro Bowl about 5 years ago when they actually moved it to Orlando. Wasn't going to go to Hawaii as much as I'd love to go, just a little pricey. But then of all things, I went to the NHL All-Star game in Los Angeles. So of course, then I traveled cross country to check one of those off the list as well. So.
Who's your hockey team? Bruins?
LA Kings, actually. So that's
Really?
kind of cool. So the funny thing
Okay.
is, I said I kind of want to do it. So I went to the baseball All-Star game as a Mets fan. I went to Citi Field.
Yeah.
NHL All-Star game in Los Angeles. I'm a Kings fan. And the Pro Bowl is never in a specific stadium.
Yep.
That's neutral, so I'll never have to. MetLife's never going to host a Pro Bowl, most likely. So and
They've hosted the Super Bowl.
They have
once.
hosted the Super Bowl, actually. Yeah, not the Pro
a
Bowl.
handful of years ago, right? Like,
Yep.
It wasn't long ago. 18,
No.
19, something like that?
Yeah, maybe a little further, but not by a lot. Yeah.
Within the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I've not done the. So the funny thing is, I only went to my first NBA game ever,
Okay.
3 days ago.
Really?
Yeah, I had never been to an NBA game until just a couple
Where'd you go?
days-
New York, Boston?
Chicago.
Oh, okay. United Center?
United Center, yeah. So it was the Ring of Honor, and they were supposed to. They were enshrined Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Phil Johnson, Jerry Krause.
3 days ago?
On this past Friday the 12th.
Oh, wow. So
And-
they were all there.
No, that's what stunk of it. So I planned the whole thing. I'm like, you know what? This will be a bucket list thing. I've never done it.
Oh my
This will be
God,
great.
yeah.
We planned the whole thing. Get there. I'm at dinner, and I find out Michael Jordan. I'm in Chicago having
Yeah.
dinner. Find out Michael Jordan's not coming. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me.
How
does
would
he
he
not
not
come?
go to that?
And he didn't. He said he sent a video thing and said, sorry, I can't be there, or whatever. And then Dennis Rodman sent a video as well and said, sorry, I can't be there. Weather delayed. It kept me. I'm thinking, well, I got here. How was weather a problem for you?
Was Scotty on there?
Scottie Pippen was not there. It was kind of a downplayed thing. It was actually very surprising how probably some of the biggest faces of the franchise are being inducted into this basically Hall of Fame. It's called Ring of Honor, and weren't there. I was a little surprised how they did it on the night they did it was against the Golden State Warriors, and they partly did that because
Yeah.
Steve Kerr, who was part of the
Absolutely.
72 win team,
Yeah.
that whole team was inducted. So he was going to be there because he's the
Did
head
he get in
coach.
the Ring of Honor too?
He was. Well, he gets to go as a team, as a team. So I
Okay.
think they had 11 individuals, and they inducted the team that won 72 games, which at the time was the most in NBA history. So, I mean, it was still a cool moment. I got
to
to
see
experience
Steph
that.
and
yeah,
right? Steph Curry.
Steph Curry, who did not play well until the fourth quarter, but yeah.
The NBA, I've seen a couple of them. NBA games I don't follow the NBA that much, but actually seeing an NBA game because like the players are pretty well known because there's
Yeah.
only so many guys in like the league.
Right.
They're still fun games.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I don't think I've been to Boston, but I've seen like the Nets. I saw the Knicks. I think I saw I know I saw another random NBA game somewhere. I can't remember the team. When you just see, like, I've seen the Angels play at the Anaheim. It's just like
Yep.
when you're visiting the stadium and
Yeah.
you happen to go to a game. There's a couple of those. I saw the Ducks play hockey, like, just random stuff. But, yeah, basketball is fun. That's funny. So what's your basketball team? Is it
Bulls.
Is
Just
Bulls?
grew up on the Jordan
Yeah.
bandwagon and stuck with them. I'll admit NBA is probably the one I follow the least.
Yeah.
As of the major sports.
So you watched
but-
The Last Dance then? The
Of course,
documentary?
yeah. I had to watch. I had to watch that. Yeah, I put my Jordan jersey on and watched it, and yeah.
Especially when that came out, that was the greatest sports documentary ever.
That was it was
Because it
so
came out
good.
during COVID. It was like they
Yeah.
moved it up for COVID, and
Yes, it was supposed to come out later in that summer, and they moved it up to the
Yeah.
spring. My dad and I they do 2 hours a night, or
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and I'd go to my dad's, and we'd watch the 2 hours
They
every
were so
night.
good.
Yeah.
And it's one of those. I think it was like 10 episodes. I'm like, I would rewatch all of them.
I haven't rewatched them, but I really need to, especially now having gone to that. I'm like, now I want to watch them again. Anyway. Yeah.
It was so cool when you just saw like them smoking like in the the training room after the game, drinking beer. I'm
Yeah.
like, just a totally different culture. but
Jordan bets on everything, including throwing things across the room.
I know when I was watching. Did you see there was a sports clip the other day? Speaking about gambling, when Tiger Woods drove the ball off his knees, you see that clip?
No.
So he was there was these guys that do kind of like sports, golf sports thing for Barstool, and they basically had like a little segment with Tiger, and they're all big fans of Tiger and stuff. So he gets up and he's like, and I just saw this clip online, and he's like, let's do a long drive competition. So the guy's like, okay, and he goes, and the guy hits the ball out there. He's whatever, looks like a decent shot. Tiger's like, okay, all right. He goes, you see where that went? And actually, let me see if I can pull it up for you. He's like, you see where that went? He's like, yeah. Let me see if Tiger Woods. Yeah, so this must be 6 days ago.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is what.
Oh wow. I'm gonna go ahead and guess he's practiced that once or twice, but that's still pretty impressive.
So they end up basically like calls him out. He's like, let's have a little competition, and I mean, number one, he knows exactly what he's gonna do.
Yeah.
And but the thing behind it is these guys are just so competitive that like even something like that, he's like, we got to do something. I got to beat you at something.
Is that their form of playing horse in bat?
It must be, but it's like when you look at like Jordan, like just what they gamble on. It's like I think they need that competitive edge. And I think even in the documentary, he just like made up something. Like this guy said something to him. He's like, I never said that. And he's like, no, you never said that. I just made that up. And like, you made that up, and you like went off on this guy. So it's just crazy when you hit that level of sports. But Ken, anything you want to? You got a show tonight at some point.
I do. Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
Okay.
Man, I got a little something.
Put a shirt and tie or a suit and tie on,
Yeah,
and do you always wear a suit and tie? Is that kind of like still standard?
Yeah, that's kind of the uniform.
Yeah.
If I'm live at an event or something, I might just go with a button down polo jacket, or like my work jacket, fleece or whatever sometimes. But if I'm in the studio or doing the actual show, I'll
Because I always think like the NBA now dress down. They go from suits and ties
Yeah.
now to like the casual wear. I'm like, I like the casual style.
we
I don't know when they changed that, but I like it.
right. Yeah, it's funny. I still remember when I was younger. Two things I hated to do was get dressed up and shave.
Okay.
And now I
was going to ask you to shave.
So I've been off for a couple of days basically. So that's why I have a little bit of growth going on.
I was wondering that. I'm like, maybe just like super casual.
I have been on on air with a beard before. I did it for a while, a couple times.
There's no like rule against it.
Not really. No,
They probably don't want like a big bushy beard.
No one's a fan of it, but as far as like
I didn't know like
bosses.
I didn't
and
know if
stuff,
like
but-
lighting or like makeup, like if it made a difference.
Yeah, and it doesn't. No, not too bad.
Because you have to put makeup on right before a show.
You're supposed to.
Yeah.
I don't.
Just got that naturally good skin.
I jokingly say I'm just naturally good looking. So the reason I don't is actually, so I did when I first started.
Yeah.
I had to do it, and I got a whole tutorial on it because I
Yeah.
never did it before.
Yeah.
So didn't know how blending works and all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
shade, I don't either.
Yeah.
I was in when we were doing a senior play in high school. We had to put makeup on.
Oh,
And I was
okay,
like,
yeah.
it was the worst thing ever. 'Cause
Right.
You just wanted to pull it off.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is I'd have to do it before 6. I'd do a 6 o'clock show. I'd have to go to a game, and while I'm at this game, like rubbing my face, I'm like, oh, I gotta stop touching my face. I forget there's makeup on me and stuff. But
Yeah.
But one night, kind of again, you always have deadlines. One night I'm at a game late or something, and I get back, and I don't think I had to be on for the early show. So I think I was only doing a late show, and I get back, it's like 10:30. I'm still editing. I'm writing. I gotta get ready. And there's a point. It's now 11:15 because I don't come on until about 11:20 for the 11 o'clock show. So I have that little. I don't have to be right at 11. I have a little buffer. And there's a point where I still am getting dressed and putting my shirt and tie on, and it's literally like if I put on makeup, I'm not going to make it on air on time. I have no choice. I got to be on time. So let's see how this goes. And I watched it back, and I'm like, I don't see any difference.
Really?
And so I kind of kept doing it, and I don't know if my secret's out and people think, including bosses, have been thinking I'm doing this whole time, but
Yeah.
I haven't worn makeup for years. Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't know because I think it would like mess your skin up too.
It's supposed to. I mean, the lights are supposed, the lighting is supposed to wash you out sometimes and all that. But
But I meant like physically, your skin doesn't like makeup dry your skin out.
oh yeah.
Like just the actual physical makeup.
right,
of
yeah,
it?
and trying to get it, and then you have to scrub it off every night and all
Yeah.
that. It just I hated doing all that, and
Yeah.
so I'm like, I haven't worn it in years, and no one said a word to me, so I guess I'm good.
You're good. Yeah. Just we'll make sure nobody we'll block it. They can't listen to this.
Right, yeah.
Well, Ken, we're gonna wrap up there. It's at 4:00. It's 4:01. We did okay. We want to make sure you're on time
Yeah.
to your games. But I appreciate you coming on. This was a lot of fun. And like I said, I'm always like the tricks of the trade behind the scenes and like how everything does. I mean, again, you guys make it look so smooth, and then kind of the idea, like you're not running out at you're not getting there at 10:45 to change and go on set. There's
Right.
a lot of behind the scenes work, and I know editing takes time. So like that's
It's a little bit, yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Check out Ken, Fox 44, ABC 22, sports anchor. Hit him up in the DMs with some cool sports stories, right? We can
Yeah, absolutely.
try to get you on there. Or,
Any and all stories, I'll take them.
there you go. All right. Well, that's it. Episode 255, Galen Trombley Show. We're out. Thank you for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on all social platforms at Galen Trombley. Thanks for listening.